welcome to episode 112 of Zapped to the Past. I am Adrian Mills and I'm joined as always by Graham Raddings. If you haven't listened before, this is a podcast where we discuss games that were released for the Commodore 64. Last week, we looked at our first batch of games from issue 45 of Zap 64, which we are in no way affiliated with, and was slowed down by Serve and Volley, tested by Trivial Pursuit, A New Beginning, and terrorized by Terrapods. This week, we conclude our look at the games in January 1989, along with what was lighting up our TV and cinema screens that month. Graham, has 1989 started to pick up yet, or are we still surfing along in those software doldrums?
In this good old-fashioned health and safety out the window, probably unsanitary, pick and mix sweet selection of an episode, we scoot around haunted mazes, popping more pills than a 90s UK clubber, as well as the occasional bit of fruit in the sedentary Pacmania. Anyone for a game of footy? I hear someone cry. Well, first we need to track down the apparently kidnapped team before they destroy the stadium in the somewhat footless Roy of the Rovers. And we also ask, is it a shoot-'em-up? Is it a dinosaur along? Indeed, is there any point to it at all? In the oddly translated Game Over 2. If that handful of sherbet pips and fizz bombs hasn't quite injected you with enough E-numbers, we also set our phasers to stun, sound a red alert, and give a strong indication that there may well be Klingons on the starboard bow in Star Trek, the Rebel Universe. Take over the whole wide world, one territory at a time, and in small, badly scrolling map segments, in the functionally annoying Risk. We explore the confusing playbooks, the bouncy rules, and other funless parts of basketball, while also running around and throwing a ball at a hoop or two in Fast Break, before finally grabbing our trusty Waggle Rock and Best Bashing Club, heading to our sports cave and smashing some bones into the ground as we aim for the shiniest rock award in the Caveman Ugh-Lympics. At least one of these games will leave a stain on your carpet, a stain that no rug doctor will ever erase. Which game is it? That's for you to find out.
I'd like to say that things get better from episode 111. Maybe they do.
Well,
Maybe
112.
they do. Well, yeah, we're in 112, but are they getting better? Are we heading in the right trajectory?
I don't know. That's what I was asking you. Please tell us. Hopefully you've just told us. Maybe you didn't, maybe you did.
Is this an exciting fireworks display, or is this a standard box from the shop?
Or is this a cracker going off in your hand? Is this a sparkler that that you can't write your name with?
Yes, a damp party popper. Nobody likes them.
No, a soft squib.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we'll have to wait and see, won't we?
Well, I'm going to just say this now. I think there's some highs and lows in this episode.
Yeah, there's some odd scoreage as well in this.
Yes.
High scores, medium scores, but I don't think there's any disastrous ones. Maybe the odd one. Well, it plays out.
there's things that made me angry.
I've got a feeling I know what that may be, but at least one of the things.
It was there. There was a few, but there we go. Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I'm going to put it up right here at the front. If you want to support us as we go forward, you can do that. You can join our Patreon. I know things are financially hard for everyone at the moment, so I appreciate it. If you do, that's great, and massively appreciate it. In the current climate everybody finds themselves in due to whatever's going on wherever you are. But you can do that if you wish to throw us £1 a month. You can do that, and that is greatly appreciated. Or you can do the full fat one, which is the equivalent of £4.50 or whatever that is where you are. And that gets you access to our Discord, early episodes. Ask the podcast. You can ask questions. You can join in on the end of year reviews and all kinds of anything else we kind of think of and do, and stuff like that. So if you and obviously you get our greatest appreciation. And if you want to do that, you can do all that by going over to patreon.com/Zapped to the Past, which would be cool. But we get it. It's tough. So don't worry. And if you can't do that, just give us a tweet or something. Give us a share. Give us a like. Whatever it is.
All of the above.
All of the above. But enough of my yakking. Let's get on to some games. I think we should get into some games.
I think we should.
It should. And so let's get into our first one. And Graham, that's for you. Are you suffering from Pacmania?
Well, Pacmania. It's from... This was published by Grand Slam. I don't know why I had a feeling this was something to do with Gremlin, but I don't know that it is. But it certainly seems to have a lot of Gremlin-y people involved, or at least some of them. Anyway, so this is copyright Namco, developed by Tiki Tech Software, TQUE, TQ. Anyway, them. It was actually coded by Pete Harrop, Sean Hollingworth. We've come across these names before. Graphics are Jason Wilson, and the musician here is Ben Daglish. So familiar faces to the C64 gaming fraternity, as it were. So good old Pac-Man has made a comeback, hasn't he? So I'd like to say it's a surprise, All right, the beloved Pac-Man's returned in this conversion of the 1987 Namco arcade. In this version of the game, you must wander around a series of mazes consuming all the pills to progress to the next level or world. Watch out, though.
That sounds awfully familiar. Awfully familiar.
As well it might. Watch out, though. Strewn throughout the maze are deadly ghosts that, if you collide with, will kill you and take away one of your 3 lives. Luckily, in the corners of the mazes are power pills that, when consumed, will allow you to eat the ghost and force them to respawn elsewhere in the maze. Also, there are bonus fruit objects and letters, cups and things and stuff, which give you extra points, lives, and even speed boosts.
Ooh.
In complete difference to the original Pac-Man, you can also jump in this game, though so can some of the ghosts in the later levels, and it's all played from an isometric viewpoint. That's clever, that is, how they took a game like Pac-Man and remade it from a different angle.
and then added IA. Isometric angle. That makes sense. You see IA at the end. It's Pac-Man isometric angle.
Exactly. We got it figured. We got you sussed.
Wow. There you go. You said you couldn't find nothing new in retro. I've never seen anyone say that before.
So the game is a conversion, obviously, from an arcade. And so it contains the tropes and most of the aspects of the arcade, including the bloody annoying music. The C64 game is split into 2 parts of the screen. At the top, 2/3 is the isometric maze, which you kind of float around popping pills in. The maze itself is made from generally repeatable blocks on the whole, which do change according to the level you're on. Sometimes they look like Lego blocks, sometimes they're kind of pyramid shapes. They just generally assume a form. Oddly, there's also a day and night mode for some reason, which means you can switch between colour and relatively less colour. And I think it might even give it sort of a high-res twinge, but it doesn't change the Pac-Man itself or the ghost. They're always in medium res. Good old medium res for a Pac-Man. That's the best res for any Pac-Man, I've always thought. You can also turn off the music, which is really annoying, and pretty much all the way through. With the F3 and the F3 key to switch off the day and night mode, and M for music. And you get the sound effects, which are exactly as you would expect them to be. Waggo, waggo, waggo. Now, popping pills and then, woo, woo, woo kind of sound. No, Pac-Man sounds. Pac-Man.
Yep.
It's angular Pac-Man. It's only a single-player game, of course. So you start. So once you start, it's into the maze and away you go. This has an annoying habit, though, of just starting your route going left. So Pac-Man at least starts you in the middle of Pac-Man in the maze, and you can choose a direction. But not in this game. As soon as you start, you're going left, whether you like it or not. You're going left. I hope you like left because you're going left. So if you don't want to go left, you can't not go left when you start this game. You have 3 lives to get through and also credits, so you can restart from the last level you died on after your lives run out. Seems totally arbitrary, that, but okay, there it is there. The bottom third of the screen is the UI, which is oddly in grey on a game that's got a black background. I think that might be hiding a glitch. Because there was mention of a grey raster bar glitch that I'd read about that didn't appear to be on the all grey UI. And so the purple colored score and highlight text kind of gets lost in the grey. Purple on grey's never been a good combination for things generally in the C64. They don't work out so well. It's hard to read that, but you won't care really, I have to say.
Yeah.
So it's all somewhat lost. Your Pac-Man and the Ghost appear to be medium res, like I've said, and they're a lot smaller than the arcade graphics, but they do at least move around at a reasonable pace. So this is based on the Namco arcade. I think the Namco arcade's from 1987, I think. But it principally follows the exact same design. There's no real changes to that. So though it's generally fun to play, there is a dreary and lifeless tone to this, which is inherited from the original game, I thought. The arcade is a pretty boring old thing, I think, all said and done. And it's never one of those arcade games that I think is too fondly remembered. Nobody sits there and goes, do you remember those days when we used to play Pacmania? Pac-Man, maybe, but not Pacmania. Pacmania, like Pac-Land, it's one of the Pac family games. It's the awkward family cousin that nobody really gets on. It turns up to events now and again, and you're polite, but you're not gonna remember them fondly, particularly. They're kind of nondescript anyway. That's kind of where it sits for me with this. Because I've always thought the arcade was pretty dull. The C64 has certainly partaken of the boring fruit. I can tell you that much. As you trundle around the more or less empty levels, popping pills and eating the occasional ghost, with the mundane music going round and round in circles, you'll be reminded of why the original Pac-Man worked in the way it did. Simple, single screen. Remember those 2 factors. Simple, single screen, 2D. No jumping needed. Well-designed mazes, which is something you've referred to many, many times about Pac-Man, is the fact that it's got really well-designed mazes. This game, not so much. Not so much. I don't know why, but they just feel isometrically annoying in this game, the levels.
Is that what else the IA stands for? Yeah.
It felt a bit like the Pepsi game that we played. Do you remember the Pepsi one that kind of ripped this off, in a weird way?
Mad Mix. Pepsi's Mad Mix. Yeah.
It's like a Pac-Man facsimile that totally misses the point of Pac-Man as a game design. I mean, it's not wholly offensive. Much of the arcade is at least here, and it is pretty colourful, at least in day mode. Stupid. And though the graphics are smaller than they are in actual Pacmania and all the other versions, all the other 16-bit versions, let me be clear there, because there are worse versions than this one. Amstrad, I'm looking at you, yeah. But so it does have smaller graphics, obviously, than that. But it just, for me, look, the one thing this is missing, it's got the pack, all right? Definitely full of pack. Mania, not so much. I'm feeling no Mania from this game. You just kind of saunter around the mazes. So I'm just going to pick up these pills. Oh, there's a ghost. Oh, no, I'll just go the other way. I won't see one for 10 minutes because they're all buggered off in the other corner of the maze.
Yeah.
It's just nothing. It's just the reason why Pac-Man works is because it's a little bit manic. It's like an enclosed space. It's all on one screen. You can visually see everything. That's the point of Pac-Man. And you feel, when you're playing that game like that, your peripheral vision is picking up the little cues of the ghosts around the edges. It is. It's just that's how it works. And so you sort of panic. And that's often what drives you into the path of the ghosts. Remember, there's no AI in Pac-Man. Those ghosts aren't challenging you or following you around. They're just following a pattern. But because you apply human logic to that, it feels like they're following you around. It feels like they're trying to block you in and stuff. They're not doing any of that. It's just you applying that mental logic to it.
I thought Pac-Man was heralded as one of the first one that did have some kind of rudimentary AI. All 4 ghosts have different behaviour. It's
not AI though. They don't decide to go left instead of going right every time. They have a pattern that they'll follow. If you go a certain pattern, they'll go a certain way.
Yeah, that's
always,
how you can sort of run it through perfectly at time.
Exactly. But at the same time, people don't generally, somebody's going to play the game and look for those patterns, fine. You're going to get really good at it. You're going to end up like, the guy in King of Kong movie, what's he called? Billy Mitchell, whatever his name, the guy that had the world record and all that. Fine. But the general players like me, you play it, you go into the arcade, you play it, you see the ghost in your peripheral vision and you run around. Well, this kind of elides that by just being a bit floaty and a bit nondescript, and the mazes in 3D don't really work very well. And so it goes very pedestrian. It's just a pedestrian Pac-Man. It's not manic enough. It's not Pac-manic. It's just Pac-boring. Pac-Man needs peril to it through it. You need to be able to panic in that situation, and you need peril. When the maze ramps up the sound effects, you get the woo, 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 and things go a bit faster, and the ghosts are going a bit faster, and everything's running about, and you've got a few dots all over the place to get. You feel a little bit of panic about that. In this game, I'll get to those dots in a bit. I'm just going to go through this tube. Just going to sort of float around a bit. And oh, there's a ghost over, man. I'll just jump over the ghost because that's what I can do now. It's boring. Pac-Man needs panic. It needs mania. It needs crazy. This is none of those things. It should not be called Pacmania. It should just be called Pac Pedestrian. Dull. And I don't like it. Did you like it?
I didn't mind it, if I'm perfectly honest. I just took it for what it was. I mean, I'm never a massive fan of the original arcade. I always thought it was an odd thing. I mean, it's just Pac-Man twisted slightly to the side and fudged into a 3D format, isn't it? I did think this was a good conversion of that, though. I mean, you've got the source material in front of you, and they've done a good job in converting that source material to the C64. Yes, they've gone for wide over tall, because the original arcade game is taller. It's that sort of 9:16, whatever sort of format, where they've gone wide. Obviously, to keep in sort of
and bigger. The sprites are all bigger, aren't they? Golf ball size.
And that's to keep in line, obviously, with the C64's, sprite 2:1 wide, isn't it? So they've gone for the wide instead of the tall.
Yeah,
so
24 pixels by whatever they are. 21,
yeah, whatever it is, sort of thing. Whereas, I mean, all the other 8-bit ones have gone for the tall version because they've got a different ratio. But I didn't mind it. It moved. I think the good things I liked about this is it is fast. It moves at a decent click, as you said, which I like. We've seen so many of these games which are really deadly slow. I think the graphics are actually quite good. I think the mazes are quite well drawn. The isometric view is quite nice. There's a bit of weird brown, but there's some nice elements to them. I think it looks the part. It moves fast. I had a look at the other versions. The Spectre version, the Amstrad version was ugly. The Amiga version, which I heard a lot of people read a few people go, no, if you got that, just play that one. Looked incredibly slow and boring. Much slower, but it was slower than this.
Yeah, but version. I think that's the problem. Is that what would compel you to play this over the ordinary Pac-Man?
Well,
what is there about it? There isn't anything about it.
I can jump. Don't forget there are two. Also, as well, who knew that Clyde was the boss of the ghosts?
It isn't. They're just trying to make sense of it.
The retconning stuff, and he's hired 2 new ghosts, Sue and Funky.
Yeah, there are more ghosts in it. I'll give it that. But they all cluster together in the corners, so you never really see them.
They do. You don't really see them that much. I didn't. I mean, as it was, I had a bit of fun with this. I didn't mind it. It played okay, and it was fine.
It was easy.
It's easy, yes, and I think that's the main issue with it. It's a good conversion of a so-so arcade game. I think
that's what I said.
I think that's we've said that about
it gets dull.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really polish, like you said. It needed to be a bit more manic, and even the arcade game's pretty slow. And I think they were just pushing probably too much. But I didn't hate it. It's just, it is what it is. I think like it's what we saw about Operation Wolf last time. It's a decent version of its host, of its parent.
I mean, the better version of this comes way later on mobile with, is it Pac-Man 2056 or 256 or whatever they call it?
Yeah, Pac-Man 3, 20, whatever it is. I've got it on my phone
the one that's sort of like a sort of endless runner type Pac-Man, but it's done in a Pacmania style isometric view. Works way better because you've got panic.
Yes, yeah, it does, and it is. But I can't get too irate about this. I didn't mind it. I thought it was like I said, it's a good conversion of sort of source material.
And the music, as much as it's like I said, I didn't like it, but I don't like. It's the same as the arcade. It's the version of it. It cuts off a little bit weirdly at certain places, but it's the same. Same as it. You can get the in-between sort of supposedly comic bits, but they're not, are they? They're not funny. They're
not funny, but it's good that they've sort of included them in there, and again, all in a single load, which is, nice to see with these kind of things. Which
it's unusual with some of these games, yeah.
Yeah, so that and Operation Wolf, nice to see them all in a single load. But yeah, it was okay. But I don't know if what did it get? 88%?
88%? No chance. Come on.
Yeah, so, I mean,
this is a 50%er all the way.
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think you hate it more than I did.
I don't hate it. I just think it's boring. I would rather play Pac-Man. And at this point, you probably get it for about £5 cheap, £6 cheaper than that.
Probably. But at least we can, we can lay claim to the fact we've worked out what the IA stands for at the end. Yes. Isometric angle. There you go.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Pac-Man, definitely. Isometric angle. There you go.
Yep.
Take anything away from this review, that's your thing. There we go, Pacmania. It's not really it isn't manic, you're right. It isn't. That's the thing.
Boring, dreary.
You put mania in something and you expect fast-paced shenanigans, and it doesn't have that. But hey-ho, let's move on from Pacmania to our next one, which I'm sure will be ace. Roy the Rovers is our next one. It's full price, this one. Roy the Rovers. It's more football. More football is here, Graham, in the form of Roy the Rovers from our favourites of this issue, Gremlin Graphics. They did so well last episode because this, it's from Gremlin, so it means it's obviously going to be a winner, a real beaut. We know it must be. There are no credits for this. That's always a worry. I always find that a bit of a worry. Say that it was made by something that someone calls System Applied Technology. I mean, that's just 3 words, isn't it? That's what 3 words? That's where someone lives.
Could easy be.
For whoever they are, System Applied Technology. Full price, I said. It must be good. Anyway, Roy the Rovers, you know who he is? Are you aware of Mr. Roy? And
yes, well, I'm aware of the comic strip. Yeah. That's it.
I just got this from the wiki because obviously, like you, I was aware of it. So Roy the Rovers was a British comic strip about the life and times of a fictional footballer and later manager named Roy Race, who played for Melchester Rovers. The strip first appeared in the Tiger comic in 1954, before giving its name to a weekly and later monthly comic. The weekly strip ran until 1993, following Roy's playing career until its conclusion after he lost his left foot in a helicopter crash.
I don't know why I'm laughing.
I didn't expect Roy the Rovers to be going that dark. Anyway, but when the monthly comic was launched later that year, the focus switched to Roy's son, Rocky of the Rovers. Rocky Race. Rocky Race. Yeah, he also played for Melchester. The publication was short-lived and folded, though, after only 19 issues. People were not interested in Rocky. Get out, Rocky.
Folded. Snigger.
As well as dealing in on-pitch action, Roy of the Rovers featured high drama off the pitch, with kidnapping storylines a recurring feature of its early decades.
Sounds pretty bleak.
I know. From the 1970s onwards, stories included a shooting, a terrorist atrocity, and several celebrity guest appearances.
Blimey.
I know.
It sounds like a soap opera.
I know. But all in comic form. Essentially, it's a boys' own footballing comic. There's always a thing, and it's a real. There's a saying in football commentary. Go, that's a real Roy the Rovers moment, and things like that, which essentially means it's something. Yes, it is. Yeah, because essentially what it means is that something has happened that we just couldn't have predicted or expected. It's like someone's pulled it, like your foot fell off in a helicopter crash. Yeah. Anyway, so yes. So what we have here, though, is a crappy cash-in from a software house that I would say should know better, but having played Artura last week, I guess anything went by this point with Gremlin in the C64's life. They just didn't give a shit, did they? This game itself has 2 parts to it. It's got an arcade adventure of sorts and a football game. So at least it does feature football, unlike Gary Lineker's Special Super Skills, which featured no football due to Gary resting all the time.
Gary tired.
Gary, drinking. When the game loads, you're greeted with an image of Roy blasting the ball into the face of some guy who looks like he's wandered in from a 1940s film noir for some reason. I don't know what he's doing there.
It does.
It's very bizarre. I've no idea what this is about. There's also a tune that plays, a horrible tune, pitched in that annoying jovial manner with twee trills that will grate on your ears forever because it never ends and loops after about 45 seconds. Oh, that tune is awful. Past this, we can choose to play the full game or just have a game of football, even though it's labelled soccer, which is odd, seeing as this is a distinctly British game and no one calls it soccer over here. No one.
Something's gone wrong.
Yeah. So anyway, if we try the full game, then we get another full screen image where Roy is on the phone stating that the team has vanished and the promoters may pull out. And two guys in the background, two businessmen in the background going, we've lost a pen.
One of them looks like he's having a stroke. Yeah, he's not well.
It's like, where's the note? Where's my pen? Oh, it's dreadful. And Roy's just dead close up on the phone, isn't he? Like, in the colours used are bad. It's blue on brown in it. Blue on brown.
Nothing about that is good.
Nothing. Essentially, Melchester Rovers have a charity game that night, but someone has kidnapped the team, and only manly man Roy Race can find them. So, after some lengthy loading, what this leads to is a boring, dreary wander-a-thon as you start at 9 a.m. and have until 7 p.m. to find the team, who are somewhere to be found in Melchester. Otherwise, the bulldozers move in and demolish the ground. Seems overly harsh because, you'd think the police would get in and the game would get cancelled. The team's been kidnapped.
Bulldoze the ground. We're never getting them back.
It's just, as reactions go, that's a little overwrought.
I tell you what, it's something a bit weird about that.
But, when terrorist atrocities, missing left feet, who knows what's going on in this world. The game is a flick screen, multi-directional adventure as you meander around the streets trying to find clues and avert the crisis. There are 4 options across the top, accessed with the F keys. These are command, which allow you to change from a jog to a walk, or a walk to a jog. Why is that? What? Just have me run.
Just run everywhere. It's a footballer, for God's sake.
Yeah. Or you can smile or chat to people. I don't understand any of this. Object allows you to pick up, drop, or use items you may find. The special menu allows you to visit your mum, go home, or wait. I don't know what any of this is for. And the help menu just tells you to get on with it. It says you're Roy the Rovers, you can sort it. Okay, that didn't help at all. Thanks. So the game is presented in a slightly 3D-ish, isometric-ish style, but it's flat. So it's got some depth to the streets and buildings, but you can only move along a 2D plane. And when you reach junctions, you can press up or down to go along these new streets. It's as confusing as all these Turn a Nog, Death Wish 3, Masters of the Universe, handicap type games are. You soon get lost in a bewildering morass of streets that all look the same, even though they have a name on it, as you just wander about, wondering where to go, and it's just all horrible. The UI at the bottom has your quartz watch, which made me laugh, with the present time on it, counting up towards 7 p.m. obviously. It's got a compass, so you know which way you're going, which you won't. The name of the street you're on, your score, a picture of a girl for some reason, although it might be supposed to be a member of the team. I'm not quite sure.
Column A, column B.
The one there, I think, is supposed to be you. So you have one person of the team. And I think if you find the members, that would probably fill up, I think, is what will happen.
Right, that's what makes sense.
Yeah, so I think that's what's supposed to be there. So you're supposed to put the team back together. And finally, it's got some arrows to let you know which direction you can go right now. Usually it's just left or right. And then when you get to a junction, it'll point up or down. So you can press up or down to go down the new streets, and that's it. Whatever. It's boring. It's really, really boring. It's really dull and boring. If you want to play it, then press Q immediately. That turns off the music. You can thank me for that later because you want to do that. But don't play it. It's rubbish. Anyway, if you've managed to find your team or you just want a quick game of football, you can try the soccer option. If you do try the soccer option, you still get that same picture of Roy going, the team's been stolen or whatever, kidnapped. So I don't know why, if you're just having a quick game of footy. So yeah, that's it. You can try, you can do 1 or 2 players. That's about it. There's no options here, just 1 or 2 players. So when this part of the game loads, you realise that this is even worse. It's even worse than the adventure part. The game is seen from the side, sort of almost an isometric view, because the pitch is at a slant, which makes it weird to sort of get a feel of it. There are only 4 players on the pitch, on the screen at any one time. At the top, there's a huge scrolling message board that never shuts up, just randomly putting stuff up, going, Gremlin graphics, go, Roy, go, and all stuff like this. It's like, don't, it's just rubbish. There's no crowd. Below the board are the team names, Melchester Rovers versus the All-Stars, and the score. That's it. The whistle goes and nothing happens. Until you run to the ball.
It's very strange that.
I ran around the pitch, but I didn't touch the ball. You could just run around forever. The countdown, it won't start ticking down. I just ran off, ran around the pitch, ran up, ran down. For about 5 minutes, I was just running around going, is this sound? Surely they must have thought of just don't. Because the players, the 4 players that are on the pitch, they're nowhere near the ball when the whistle blows, so nothing happens. This game's going nowhere until you actually run to the ball. But once you do, you realise this is a terrible, terrible football game. And when you do run to the ball, it just bounces off you into the other player, and it's just dreadful. So this game doesn't scroll. It's flick screen. It's a flick screen football game. When you get to the either end of the 3-screen width pitch, so you've got the centre and you've got the 2 ends. There's 3 screenlets. If you go, so you go off the centre screen to either end, there are no goalposts in the goal.
Shirts for goalposts in this game.
Just dreadful. When I got onto it, I was like, where's the goalpost? You could draw goalposts. They're just lines. Just draw goalposts.
Solid lines.
It angered me so much. I was like, there's no goalpost. Oh, this is just awful.
I thought that might wind you up.
The sprites, they're not the worst I've seen in a football game. They're not great. The movement, however, the gameplay, the sense of this being anything about football, it's just not there. There's nothing to it. It's just awful. The goalkeepers are worse than that one we saw in the other week in the Peter Beardsley game. They dive and stuff, but they're actually made of no collision. That's all I can think of. There's no collision on them because the ball they're like ghost goalies. They're like, Patrick Swayze and Ghost, and that things just move through them. It's just dreadful. You can't tackle anyone. You can't do that. Kicking the ball is futile. It's just awful on every level. Every single thing about this is bad. Considering we just had Emily Hughes' International Soccer, this is another affront and manages to somehow be worse than Peter Beardsley's crap offering. This is a dual-part game where both of them would be considered contenders for worst in class, but seem to compound their abysmal quality by putting them together. So it's literally crap times crap equals crapper. What an affront is for £10. Awful, beyond awful. Yeah. It's episode 2 of 1989, and I think we're going to need a new category in the end of year awards for worst publishing house. And Gremlin are really going out for it for worst game of the year award already. I think we should do that actually at the end of this year. We should have done last year as well, but this is awful. This was dreadful on every level. 18% is being kind. This got very kind. I hated it. What about you?
Well, I didn't like it. My thought was, wow. So this is what happens if you combine 2 badly realised ideas and game genres into one.
Yeah.
No one's ever thought of blending these 2 things together, arcade adventure and football game, for a reason. Even if you thought that was a good idea, even if you did just for 1 second entertain that idea and then try and hang it on a comic strip license, just at a certain point you'd go, no, I'm not going to do that because it's going to be crap. You can't tell me this product is something you'd say you were happy with at any point because it's just not very good.
Nope.
Horrible, horrible audio. The music is one of those attempts at jaunty sort of boppy, almost the equivalent of
yes, that's what they're aiming for. Yeah.
So it's that, but on a very short loop. Gradually, that works its way into your soul. And it's all the way through the game. It's enough to drive a saint to see that, so you need to shut that bloody cacophony off. Mm-hmm. I also saw, like you, from the credits, no one's owning up to this one either, so it's just, from Gremlin. Thanks. You can collectively all take a shit for that one, because that's, don't take a bow, take a shit. Off you go. There you go. Yep. There you go. Well done. There you go. The adventure part. So let's briefly look at this for me. The adventure part, another boring walk left and right simulation with weird up and down navigation controls. Gremlin game, then, is what you describe that, right? It's just, it's the Gremlin engine. It's the Gremgin. It's back
in POG form.
In POG form. Boring. It's boring to be a footballer wandering around. That's what I've discovered. It's just boring. It's depressing. Using drop-down menus for selecting things. Drop-down menus are not, in of themselves, a wholly exciting proposition. I don't care how full of exciting words they may be. Like checkboxes. Menu options or controls have a place, maybe, but not in this sort of game. Not in a game about an exciting footballer that's going to potentially lose a foot in the future. Graphically, the backgrounds are a drab, nondescript series of street scenes. The usual thing for Gremlin, then. Grey bricks, brown window frames, and boring road details. Yeah, it's a Gremlin game, all right. Mm-hmm. Take this graphic out, put the Death Wish 3 characters in, and then you've got that. It's, and we've seen a load of them like this. Your character looked like a small red boiler suit wearing fella. Not sure why he wasn't wearing a football kit. Sort of would have made sense for him to. Even if he doesn't wear one all the time, in terms of its iconography for a game about footballer, would have made sense to do that, wouldn't it? It's okay. Yeah. It's okay to do that. Or a tracksuit, maybe. I don't know. Maybe he was wearing one. But there's no details as such. And a very sternly animated walk out of cycle, I thought. It's like, he's getting where he's going. Punch in the air he was almost. Really determined. And badly scrolling, I thought, is this going for the Holy Trinity? Are we going to go for crap backgrounds? We're going to go for crap navigation. Are we going to go for the final piece, the bad jerky scrolling? Yay, there it is. Crappy scrolling as well. Mm-hmm. Piecemeal scrolling. And I thought, goodness me. So the details, like you said, they're high res, I guess, is what you can say, which means a limited colour palette. Not the best idea in a game like this, really, to limit your colour palette. I suppose you might get away with it if you were thinking it might be like the comic strip, but it doesn't work, does it?
Nope.
None of it's nice. Controls are awkward. The navigation around the streets is stupid, but in keeping with the tradition of Gremlin games. So if it's not stupid for them, it's probably perfectly ordinary. It reminded me of Andy Cap, and not in a good way. Not that there is a good way to be reminded of that. The football part, I mean, I didn't really want to go into it because I thought, do I want to see what this is like? The curiosity got the better of me. I wish it hadn't. And I'm not going to call it the S word. It's a football match attempt. Multi-loaded. I was like, what? And then a sluggish flip screen football game with no goalposts and teams of about 2 people.
Yeah.
I mean, even Street Sports Soccer was better than this. And that, oh no, we didn't hate on that, but it's just a better football game. And that was made by people that didn't even live in a country that's main sport is football.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, no real way of controlling who it passes to and where it goes. I'm not even sure. I couldn't get the ball off them, and they just sort of ran up to the goal, went boot, and it went in. My keeper was hopeless. It's just crap. A badly realised adventure bolted to a badly realised football game. Well done, Gremlin. Well done. Golf clap, I think. Golf clap for Gremlin for being able to combine 2 things so badly to create the ultimate football turd. Well done. Well done indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Poor old Roy the Rovers. As if losing a foot in the future ain't bad enough. They've got that to contend with.
I know, and no one liking your son.
No, sad. I'm sure Roy the Rovers was probably a really great thing till that happened. But there you go. 18% from Zap. Still too bloody high for me, that.
Yeah, it is really high.
10 quid. 10 quid they're asking for that.
Oh. And this would have been released just before Christmas as well. This is Christmas fodder. Because remember, we're in January to be reviewed.
Oh, yeah.
So imagine, you like Roy the Rovers, don't you? I got you this.
Yeah, you can imagine. Look, it's a football game. How am I wandering around the streets looking depressed? Oh, I don't know. Have I got the right one?
I don't know.
You have.
There is a football version. This isn't football.
This isn't football. They've just bulldozed the ground down. Oh, well, that's a strange outcome for a football game, isn't it?
What have you bought me, Granny? What have you bought me?
I'll take it back and I'll get you something else. You will. You bloody will. Off you go. Now, get walking.
Here's Artura.
I thought it sounded like a margarine, so that's why I got it. Get out of this house.
Never darken our door again.
No, you're not welcome.
No. Oh, Roy the Rovers, bloody awful. Bloody awful.
Crap.
Let's move on. We've got one more this part before we go off for a break and do other stuff. And Graham, well, for you, it's Game Over 2.
Game Over again. What could you call it? I was thinking about this. There's so many ways they could have named
Game Over Part 2. Game Over the Revenge.
Game Over the Revenge would have been better. I think calling something Game Over 2 sounds stupid.
So do I.
But there you go. It's $8.95 this was. 58% it scored in Zap. Published by Dynamic, and coded by a fancy set of names, Adrian. Fancy set of names. Fernando Hernandez. Xavier Cupido. And finally, no one escapes the musician, Pablo Toledo. Sorry if you are those people. They're just great names. They're great.
They are great. They are excellent names. So we do love them.
Pablo Toledo. What? It's just a great name for a musician. That is great. You're a great guy, great person. Awesome. Anyway, the game then. Arcos has achieved the defeat of Gremlin, Empress of the 5 planetary systems, after overcoming countless difficulties. The Trops of the sidereal infantry have arrived. I'm reading this as it's written in the instructions that I've got. I think it's meant to say troops. Anyway, the Trops of the sidereal infantry have arrived to take charge of the Imperial planet. All is happiness and joy.
Is it?
That's how it's written. But no one can find the hero of the rebellion. Nobody knows where Arcos is.
Oh.
Soon it is found out that he has been captured by Gremlin's heirs and has been imprisoned on the terrible jail planet Fantis. By the way, this game was called Fantis in Spain.
It was, yeah.
To free him is a one-man mission, and Major Locke is chosen to accomplish this, as he knows the terrain best. Okay. So this game is split into 2 sort of chunks with different phases in each chunk. And I'll sort of go through explain the phases, and then we'll sort of talk about the game. So because I can quickly do this because they're summarized in like crazy fashion in the inlay.
Yeah.
So phase 1, you must approach Moon 4. You will be attacked by kamikaze hordes of Senolis. The first load is made up of 4 phases, and your aim is to land on the planet and cross the swamps mounted on your clonal Adrek. Okay.
Who wrote this?
I don't know, but his clonal Adrek sounds horribly painful.
Also, this is reminding me of the Last Ninja 2 with too much bold words for no reason.
It's been emboldened. In phase 2, you will fly over the volcanic area. Beware of the reconnaissance bombers, the balls of incandescent magma, and the ground-air missiles of autonomous recognition. I'm sensing a translation tool was used for this.
And not a good one.
And not a good one.
My hovercraft is full of eels.
Full of eels. Phase 3, you will enter the underground cavern that leads to the swamps. On this occasion, you will be attacked by multiplia serpents, which require 3 laser discharges in the head to stop them. Annihilate the nebulae of krypton gas and the enemy ships patrolling the cavern. And then phase 4, once you land, you'll be able to capture a clonal Adrek, which will enable you to cross the swamps. In your possession, you have a photonic blades that will help you defeat the inhabitants of the swamps who fight mounted on giant toads and pterodactyl.
Wow, that got prehistoric.
So that's the first load.
Yeah.
Second load, you must descend to the deepest layers of the planet and cross 6 different levels before rescuing your companion from prison. There's the surface level, a mountainous area inhabited by sidereal pelotrons. Use your rebel pelotron to do away with them.
Do away with them. That's very polite.
Do away with them. I thought pelotron was like an exercise bike. There you go. What do I know?
Absolutely. Away with you. I'm doing away with you. Away.
do away with them. These pelotrons.
These pesky pelotrons.
The pesky pelotrons.
They're stopping me erecting up my tree. Please, do away with them.
The alien base level is the second phase. Gain control of the iconic turbo laser and its proton loader. In order to be armed to full power. Phase 3, underground forest level. You must find the access medallion in order to cross the blue door.
That sounds like something from a David Lynch film.
Or a Shakin' Stevens album. The inner lake level is number 4. Escape from the fierce jaws of the Plentosaurus that dwells below the thermal waters of the lake.
One of them in Flesh Gordon.
There is. And be careful with the murderous piranhas until reaching the heliport. They're just words being put together in sentences now. This is like the earliest version of ChatGPT had a stroke.
Be careful with the murderous piranhas. I mean, piranhas are not murderers. They just
These
eat
ones
you.
are.
They just eat you. That's not murder. They're just eating for food.
That's just what piranhas do.
I said murder.
I said piranha. Magma level is number 5. The helicopter will fly through the cave leading to the volcanic area. Avoid the lava bubbles and the landslides of magmatic rock. Magmatic rock is not a term that's real. Although I think it should be. Magmatic rock sounds like a compilation album from an 80s rock band.
It really does. Yeah, it does sound like something you drive to. The best of magmatic rock on Father's Day. Get in with tracks from Boston. Journey.
Magmatic rock, magmatic power. And then there's the, I think it's meant to say prison, but it says Prisian level.
The Prisian level.
Disintegrate all the red devils guarding the millenary prison.
Millenary? What? They have hats?
It says the millenary prison, doesn't it?
The hat prison.
Hat prison. And you will view the end of Game Over 2. Good luck. And then it says after that, mysteriously, evaluation. There are 24 different enemies in Game Over 2.
Evaluation. We thought we did quite well, actually. I would think in future to do better, I'd like to involve some more levels, but I have felt that my coding's quite good.
For every one you destroy, you obtain points. It's just ridiculous, all of this. Anyway, then there's the list of controls of the ship, the clonal Adrek, which is, I think, some kind of creature, and Major Lock, of course. Anyway, so that's the game. That's what you're meant to do.
Mm-hmm.
All that. It's all exciting, isn't it? All that for £9. Game Over 2. The name don't make sense. And I can, and from the get-go, when you start this thing up, you can see they've tried for production. However, the music's horrible. There's no other word for it. It's something of an infection of SID sounds that have formed some kind of horrific audio discharge. Mercifully, it stops looping eventually, or just stops. It may not have been loop, or maybe I just went deaf. I don't know. It was horrible. You choose from 3 options: keyboard, joystick, or redefine.
Yeah.
And then you're into the game. Away you go. It's very light on options. And like I said, the game's split into those parts. So it's sort of part shoot 'em up, part, I don't know how to describe, dinosaur action, I think. Best way to describe it.
Yeah, something or other.
The first section is is a dull and pretty simple horizontal scrolling shooter. Sprites zoom in from the right, initially boring meteors that look like someone's opened a pack of Revels in space, and then some small alien spaceships in obtuse patterns and zigzags, of course. They always attack in zigzags. Shoot them if you can. Avoid them most likely because the joystick moves and the button shoots, but it doesn't shoot enough bullets to actually kill anything meaningfully. And the inertia drags you back to the left anyway, so you'll just want to get past that by just avoiding most of them, which you can do easily.
It's like you're on a bungee rope.
Yeah, it just pulls you back in. Not that you want to be. But you're just better off just going up into the top right-hand corner and waiting because none of the enemies go there. Easy. You can just float away through the level doing that. And then obviously, so you'll get past that. After a couple of those, you get, wave of Revels, wave of enemy spaceships, such as they are. Then another wave of minstrels or, Maltesers. They just look like little chocolates that are floating through space. And then you'll end up in some kind of cave, like a narrow view of a cave. And then you're avoiding spinnies. And this is something I meant to ask. Why are there always spinnies in these games? Collection of spinnies. Just collection of 8 spikes just spinning in a circle. Spinnies. Everywhere spinnies. So there's spinnies in this one. So you've got to shoot the spinnies by shooting them directly in their brains. Right in the forehead. Right in the old bean box. After that, if the shooting sound effect hasn't quite made you want to force cotton buds into your brain, you'll enter the next zone, which is, it's like a shit rim runner. Best way you could describe it. And no one wants that. Those two things are not nice. Rim runner and shit. No. And there you will run along the surface of the zone through some horrible backgrounds and avoiding more enemies until you reach, the next bit where you become the jetpack jetman as you walk around exploring and finding stuff, really. Mm-hmm. So, and that's how the game's split. So shoot them up, dinosaur runny bit, shoot them in tunnels, and then you've got the wandering around bit in the sort of the, I don't know, I guess you describe it like the final phases, I guess. Each of the levels has a UI, a score at the top and lives indicated at the bottom. And if you lose one of those, then obviously it changes. In other zones, you will also see your health and some extras you can have picked up, like laser guns. No idea really what they're for, what they do, and how they help you. It's not really indicated in the instructions or anything else, but yeah, there they are. All the graphics are pretty blocky, but colourful. And the later animation, your Jetman type character, the Colonel, whatever his name is, Colonel Clink, whatever his bloody name was, it wasn't actually terrible, that. Indeed, I think it's fair to say that as much as I don't like anything about this game particularly, the game does get better looking as you get further in. So it starts off as a pretty lame shooter. The second bit's like a crap rim runner, but by the time you get to the end, it's actually a passable game at that sort of end bit in terms of how it looks. It's not too bad. But you've got to get past all the other stuff, the running and the shooting of the dinosaurs and all that stupid stuff. The music, as I've said, is in a tonal front to audio, and the sound effects are a series of piercing audio needles that punch you more than entertain your eardrums. I mean, tonally, this game is all over the shop. I'm not sure that it knows what it wants to be, and there's no glue holding these things together. The mission is vague at best, and this shows, because you're sort of in this somewhat aimlessly and thanklessly, and you plod from zone to zone with very little reward or fun along the way. There is a nice look and feel later, and there is some interesting production at the start, but I'm afraid there's no getting away from it. This is just dreary. It's just a dreary game, and it's quite hard as well. Well, actually, I say that. Towards the end it is. Getting there is actually conversely, compared to Game Over, this is actually relatively easy in that respect. It's pretty easy to breeze through it. I've kind of gone the other direction with it, really. But you won't want to persevere. I mean, you think you've got to get through all that to get to this really dreary, end bit. I don't know. There's no getting away from any of this, really. It's dreary. It's got little to offer the player other than an earache. So I didn't enjoy it. So I'm sorry, Game Over poo. And I will say it, and I will take that low-hanging fruit. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that fruit. Lovely. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird, isn't it? Because this was never meant to be Game Over 2. It was just a game called Fantas.
Yeah, so
in
Fantas
Spain.
on the Spain, yeah.
In Spain, it was all it was meant to be. And then when they brought it over here, they renamed it to Game Over 2 and made it, a thing, which seems odd. Why don't you just release it as Fantas? It's just
put
saying
more booby art on the box and things.
Yeah, well, actually, the booby art on the Spanish version is even more thingy because she's in like what?
Is it even boobier?
It's even boobier. She's in a mankini and there's loads of green things. It's very odd. And I had that as a loading screen as well. But either way, whatever. The game is it's average. It's average in every way. This game. It got 58%. Yeah. The first few levels are the average horizontal shmup. They're not terrible. Nothing's terrible about this. Everything's average. I didn't mind the music. It's just average. The sound effects are average. The visuals are average. Nothing outstanding. The second section is perfectly average. It's just average. Wander around and find stuff type of affair. With some nice sprites and bits in that, which are quite cool. But it just doesn't do anything to reach above beyond perfectly average. I can't describe it any other way. The best thing about this is it's not as well. It's not technically Game Over 2, but if we count it as it is, it's not as punitively hard as that game. So it is easier to play, and that's a good thing. But the two sections of the game, they've just been bettered by other games that do that one thing better. We've got way better shooters, and we've had way better things like Antiriad and things like that, which do the collector thing better. So
absolutely,
like Roy the Rovers, if you put two things together, it doesn't make it exponentially better if both those things are average. 1 times 1 is still 1.
Well, no, we haven't said that for a while, have we? You put two pieces of shit in your hand and you clap them together. Doesn't make it like a much better shit, does it?
It makes it worse for everyone. Everyone around you is now unhappy because they're covered in shit.
Yes, that would be the outcome.
But that would happen even if you had shit in one hand and clapped.
Yes, true. Just don't do it.
You just have less shits flying about.
Just generally avoid holding shits and clapping, really.
It's not
and
something
again,
I do.
Just apologise to our non-scatological listeners.
It's not something I do in my general day-to-day life. But when I do it, I like to number 2 it. I'll do it twice because if you're gonna do it, you have to go the whole hog.
You double scoop.
You do, absolutely. Yeah.
I'll do a twin scoop clap.
Yeah, absolutely. You want it spraying between all your fingers.
Goodness me. Darkness swept across the land.
So yeah, 1 times 1 is 1. That's all this is.
It is.
I mean, although the lure of 2 types of games is a good one, neither of them are going to have you playing this for long. It's just the shooter is annoying because of that bungee rope thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why anyone thought that was a good idea. You're on a ship on a bungee rope. It's like, I'm going forward. No, I'm going back. Go forward. I'm going back.
You read the instructions, right?
Oh, well, I followed them.
Apparently, I saw that they gave away Game Over with some of the editions of Game Over 2 as well.
Well, that'd be good then, because now you've got about 4 games you don't want to play.
I was going to say, just that we're talking about putting the 2 turds together.
Absolutely. Now you've just got turds on the side of your head, and you're just smacking your hands into the side of your head where you've got more turds.
Twice as many reasons to hate what you've bought.
So you sat on your ass and you've got turds in your feet, and you're just slapping your feet and your hands together.
Goodness me. And again, just like to apologise to our non-scatological listeners out there. Sorry about that. It did go darkly brown for a while there, but we're okay. We're all okay now. I'm fine now. How are you? I'm
C64 brown. Oh, game over. Game over 2 poo. There we go. That one was a painfully average at best half.
Well, Roy the Rovers ain't going to be happy with that, is he?
Well, he's lost a foot.
Melchester's just been burnt down and run over and squashed.
He lost a foot, and that was preferable to the game. That's all I can say.
Just take my other foot. I'm not playing it.
Absolutely. There we go. That's it. That's it for this part. We're going to go away, take a quick break. We're going to come back, recuperate somehow, and talk about TV and film from January 1989. So if we haven't put you off too much, please stick around. We'll see you in a bit. And we're back once again. So this is TV, January 1989. We're in post-Christmas blues. It's the unending month of January. And especially back then, January always felt unending, just grey and went on forever and ever.
Because you got paid early in December and then you didn't get paid till the end of January. Well, so your parents didn't maybe at that time or whatever. But so January's a long month.
Yeah, and living in Grimsby, it was very grey and dreary, and it was awful.
Yeah.
Anyway,
to
what we
school
got
as well, and
everyone smelled because it was always like damp.
Yeah, musty.
Yeah, very musty. 1st of January, though, before we get back to school, we had the network television premiere of Amadeus on BBC One, Milos Forman's 1984 biographical drama based on the play of the same name. There's a fictionalized biography of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
It certainly is. It's one of my favourite films, Amadeus.
Is it? I never knew that.
It is, yes. There's an amazing. I would recommend everyone go if you like. You'll have to like Mozart, obviously, and classical music. And it's quite an interesting depiction of that sort of story. The dramatised story of Mozart composing, from a very young age, and then obviously for making enemies of Salieri, and Salieri plotting to murder Mozart and, doing all of these dastardly things that they did and all of that stuff. But it's just told in a very beautiful way, visually rich. And the extended and remastered Blu-ray that's out of that, I'd recommend if you like that kind of thing, costume drama, epic film, big music. It's an amazing remaster. It's I watched it on the Blu-ray fairly recently on the, on a good sized, decent TV and that, and it was ace. wholeheartedly recommend it.
Did it win Oscars? It won Oscars, didn't it?
It did win Oscars, yeah. I'm not sure. You'd have to do a quick googly Google and tell you which ones it won, but it did win some. I'm pretty sure it was one of those ones that swept the board. I think it won quite a few.
Yes, it did win Oscars. It won 11.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it swept the board.
Best Picture, Costume Design, Actor, Production Design, Cinematography, Director, Sound Mixing, Film Editing, Adapted Screenplay, and Makeup and Hairstyling.
Absolutely. And all those things are what make it very special. And I mean, it's beautifully shot. It's really incredibly made. And of course, you've got what an amazing soundtrack. And I think what it perhaps doesn't do as much, because it doesn't really... The focus is on Mozart, and they play down Mozart's genius.
Oh, it won 8.
In fact, they play down Mozart's genius in that film in favour of it being more about him being kind of more of an erratic sort of pop star of the day, which is what a lot of people say he was, that kind of character. He's quite young, obviously very young, died very young, very extravagant kind of lifestyle and very odd personality. But there's some amazing, amazing facts about Mozart which will blow your mind.
Go on then.
Blow your mind. So, for example, he first started composing at the age of 5, not just little bits of music, full operas.
Wow.
He had a photographic memory for music. He could hear a piece of music once or look at a piece of music once. Well, actually, 2 things. He could listen to a piece of music and write it down note for note exactly accurately, even an orchestra, and write it down without any errors.
Good Lord.
And he could also hear something once and play it perfectly on any instrument that it was played across, which is kind of incredible. So any part of an orchestra's instrument, he could pick up and play anything, with the exception of, I think, the trumpet, which I think is something he didn't necessarily have a lot of time for or whatever. But other than that... Crazy, isn't it? But he's also fluent in, I think it was something like 11 languages, something like that. 12 languages.
Clever kid then.
Yeah, it just is obviously a savant. There's no way, a crazy savant. The guy, he was writing up full operas when he was very, very young. I mean, it's hard to imagine somebody having all of that in them, and the only outlet for that kind of the thing is this sort of the music that he was writing. Do you know the manuscripts of Mozart? They're error-free. This music was complete in his head when he wrote it down. It wasn't like he wrote down and made errors and crossed things out. It's written note for note perfect. Wow. Never made a change. Never corrects an error. At least the official. That's the kind of character you're dealing with, and I think they do some of that justice in the film, some of it not. But it's worth going and checking out. And I remember watching it at that time on BBC as well. Amazing film. It's really what got me hooked in.
I just think there's maybe too many notes in it.
Famously, yeah. There's too many notes, just remove a few. In fact, that's a quote we still use to this day.
It is, I know.
Yeah, very good.
There we go. 2nd of January, the network television premieres of Sesame Street presents Follow That Bird on BBC One and the 1985 Madonna starring film Desperately Seeking Susan on BBC Two.
Yeah, what do you make of them?
Well, I never knew there was a Big Bird movie, first off. Okay. But I have to be honest, I was never a massive fan of Sesame Street. So I was probably too old by the time it showed over here to really I wasn't its target audience.
What, for the Follow the Bird movie, you mean? When it was
that, but I didn't. Was it on in the UK from around 73 onwards?
Yeah,
you've written here. God, I don't remember seeing it back then. When was it on? Where was it on?
Well, it was on ITV because on different regions, so it might be why sporadic viewage of it was on Saturday mornings a bit early on. But BBC turned it down originally. No, they turned it down because they said it was, too American or whatever. And so it ended up on ITV. But yeah, it was on there for quite an early time. I remember watching it in the very early 80s.
Sesame Street broadcast dates in Britain, according to Wiki, gives Yorkshire 29th of March, 1982.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it was early 80s.
That's why we didn't get it. It's until I was 10. I was too old for it.
You're never too old for Sesame Street. Yeah, I remember watching it in... So I was living in Cleethorpes back then. That had been around 1980, so it must have been on sporadically on regional TV at a certain point. Anyway, just by the by, I never liked the character of Big Bird, that's for sure, or his weird, miserable elephant companion, Mr. Snuffleupagus. But I do like the Sesame Street mini sketches because they are very funny and basically Muppet Show.
Yeah.
And you got Bert and Ernie and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, they were okay, I guess. Desperately Seeking Susan. It's a odd film, isn't it? It's Rosanna Arquette in it mostly.
Branded as Desperately Seeking Story, wasn't it?
It became famous for Madonna, but it's what is it? It's more of it's Rosanna Arquette wanting to be like her, isn't she? She
stumbles, bangs her head, and then sort of thinks that she is her.
Yeah, and who's the guy in it? Aaron, what's his face? I can't remember. Or Aidan, someone or other in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very 80s film, mid 80s film.
Famous for Getting to the Groove, wasn't it? That was from that.
It was, yes. There we go. 7th of January, the chart show moves from Channel 4 to ITV.
I never watched it.
I watched it every week. It was great. Every Saturday lunchtime, It was cool. The good thing about it, some interesting thing about this, it was because it was just videos, but it also had specialist charts on as well. So you would get the dance chart, you get indie charts, you get rock charts in the middle of it, and it was really the only chance to catch some more obscure indie and rock videos on, like, this was on at 11:30 on a Saturday morning, so it was a nice time to sort of catch, like, I remember seeing stuff on there like Mega City 4.
And bands, breakfast cereal.
Yeah, with bands like that, you're like, oh, wow, cool. Interestingly, according to Wikipedia, the pop-up information snippets were presented as windows in a mock-up graphical user interface called HUD. In 1987, this was replaced with the more familiar display, which featured a mouse pointer and icons generated on an Amiga computer. Although commonplace nowadays, such interfaces were relatively cutting edge at the time. The look of the icons was updated on the move to ITV on 7th January 1989, and again upon the show's relaunch in 7th December 91. As part of a competition prize from Amiga Computing Magazine.
Cool is that?
Yeah. Not that cool, though, because that change only lasted 1 week. People complained and they went back to the original ones.
I like to see what they look like, though. I'll have to chase them down.
But yeah, so I always like that when you think about old technology, just like what we used to do when we were making our films on our national diploma and stuff, and we'd had the Genlock and an Amiga. We got them to buy one, didn't we, at college? And then we would overlay graphics and stuff onto it.
What's that title software called that we used to use for that? I can't remember what it's called.
Oh, I can't remember. It was really good, though. It was a good bit of software that was. But but that, it's just essentially just using an Amiga for different stuff in it. So it's kind of cool that was kind of being used for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice. 8th of January, the original air date of the Only Fools and Horses episode, Yuppie Love, featuring a classic scene in which Del Boy falls through the bar. A 2006 poll named the scene as the most popular of the entire series, while it was also named the 7th greatest television moment of all time in a 1999 Channel 4 poll.
No argument from me.
No, it's genius. It's just, it's so good. It's a classic
makes me laugh
comedy.
When I see it even now.
It's the way. I mean, everyone's seen it. It's the way he falls. There's no bend. There's no bend in his body. He just goes down. He doesn't look or anything. He just falls. It's so good. It's perfection. It's incredible. The timing of the woman opening the bar behind him and just not noticing, and he's just going, "Play it cool, Trig. Play it cool." And just falls. It's so good. It's so funny. But yeah, and as you said, up there with Trigger's broom, I love Trigger's broom. Yep. I still use that joke to this day. It's Trigger's broom. For those who don't know, for those who haven't seen Only Fools and Horses, Trigger was a character in Only Fools and Horses who was a little slow, shall we say, but he had a broom and he was up for an award for keeping his broom for however many years. And he was going to get a Lifetime Achievement Award for keeping this one broom. And they go, how long you had it? He goes, 17 years. Well, it's 20 years, something like that. And it's really good. I've only had 14 heads and 17 different handles or something.
Yeah. Oh, it's like a new broom. Yeah, it's brilliant. It's it's such a, honestly, I've got a lot of love for Only Fools and Horses. It was a staple show to watch in our house.
Yes.
And I can't think of anybody I know that doesn't like it. I can't think of anybody in the world I've ever met that doesn't like it.
It's pinnacle of British sitcom.
So good. So good. I've not watched the musical and it's in London at the minute. I've heard good things about that as well. But
it went on too long.
Yeah.
When it should have finished when they became millionaires. Bringing them back afterwards when they lost it all, so I think was a move, a bad move. But the episode where Rodney as well has to pretend to be 12 years old because he won a cornflakes painting, they got a holiday off it. That's always
everything
good.
About it. The one with the explodes in sex dolls and all that. It's just everything about it's brilliant.
Batman and
Robin. Honestly, if you don't know what we're talking about, a swift Google of that show and you'll go on YouTube. You'll find all of them clips on there. Don't you worry about that.
Oh, Only Fools and Horses, what a classic. 20th of January, BBC Two airs live coverage of the inauguration of George Bush as the 41st President of the United States.
Who would even want to watch that?
Not I.
No.
Who cared back then?
I.
No. 22nd of January, ITV launches an omnibus edition of Coronation Street, which airs on Sunday afternoons. But the repeat is not stranded across the network, with different regions airing it at different times. Some regions, including Central, later moved the episode to a Saturday afternoon slot, and the omnibus is dropped in some areas from September 1990.
Yeah, I can start to see that.
I mean, it was in competition because was EastEnders doing that by this point?
Yeah, they must have been.
The EastEnders omnibus on the Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, and there was another one. Didn't Emmerdale do an omnibus at a certain point as well? I think they all started it, didn't they? Probably, so you could catch up on the whole week.
I
mean, my sisters loved it because they lived out in Canada, so they didn't get to see it regularly. So they saw the omnibuses on their PBS channel or whatever, and they were well into it.
When it was on 5 nights a week, that's 2.5 hours of EastEnders and Coronation. That's just too much.
Some people dig it, not me though.
Too much. I don't know if they still do these. The only person I would know is Mr. Brown Sauce. He'd probably know.
Does he like stuff? Does he still watch Coronation Street stuff?
Probably. Probably.
Of course he does.
I reckon he will. Yeah. 24th of January, BBC One airs an episode of EastEnders featuring a mouth-to-mouth gay kiss between the characters Colin Russell and Guido Smith. The first time it was seen on British television. The scene causes uproar among viewers and in the press.
Just get a life. Bloody hell, honestly. Move on. You can't imagine it, can you? Then nowadays, it's just like, can you imagine if you could go back in time and take a couple of episodes of modern television with you and show them to these audiences that were chomping at the bit and furiously writing angry letters to the BBC because of a gay kiss on EastEnders?
Could you imagine if you took one of the early episodes of Game of Thrones back and showed it to Mary Whitehouse?
Yes, I think she'd be flying her banners and sigils and getting a banner in her, and then
she really would. Yeah, I'll just go, look, this was on Head Pop. That was what video nasty is that from? No, nothing. It was just on HBO.
Regular TV show, yeah. That's how we roll now.
Yeah. We're well past that. Yeah. So not a lot in TV in the grey month of January. Oh, sorry. There's new shows. Loads of new shows. Actually, there's loads of new shows. Not a lot of these I've heard of. 1st of January, there was The Dog It Was That Died.
Never heard of it.
This was written for BBC Two Radio in 1982 and concerns the dilemma faced by a spy over who he actually works for. The play was also adapted for television by Stoppard and broadcast in 1988. I presume 1989 because it was 1st of January. Never heard of it. No.
Nope.
3rd of January, Green Claws.
Another one? No.
A television children's series aired in the BBC between 3rd of January and 6th February 1990. This is interesting because it starred Nick Mercer and Stella Goodyear, was written by Ursula Jones and directed by Adrian Mills.
Hey!
And produced by Christine Hewitt.
You did it.
It was The Dog It Was that did it. I had nothing to do with this. Nothing. I'm not having my name stuck to this. It was that guy off That's Life who stole my life.
Yes, so you say. Where were you that night?
What, 3rd of January? Probably round... No, it wouldn't be round yours. Probably round at someone's house. Or playing on my Commodore 64. 4th of January, Tom's Midnight Garden. Tom Long is staying with his uncle and aunt when their grandfather clock strikes 13. Tom makes a strange discovery. A portal to the past where only a friendly girl called Hattie can see him. It's adapted from a novel by Philippa Pierce.
No, I'm not so sure. Sounds like someone struggling with their puberty. That.
Oh, you think it's an allegory, do you?
Tom's Midnight Garden. Okay.
So is it a metaphor?
Yes. What did you find in your garden? Was there little worms there, Tom? Yeah, not good.
The big hand was pointing up.
Exactly. It struck 13. Of course it did. Also
on the 4th of January, The Dark Angel.
Ooh, sounds ominous.
It does. Maud Ruthin, a lovely and sensitive girl, is sent to stay with her uncle Silas Ruthin, a charismatic rogue who stands to inherit the family fortune should anything untoward happen to young Maud. With a tyrannical Madame de la Rogière as her governess, Maud finds that the estate holds terrors beyond her imagining. Starred Peter O'Toole.
There's the first terror beyond her imagining right there. Peter O'Toole!
he played Uncle Silas.
Oh, gosh.
I don't know anything more about this.
No, should we ever.
No,
should we ever.
It is dark. 5th of January is Desmond's. I never got into this like yourself, but it's important, though, this.
Yeah.
It's important shows. It's Channel 4 sitcom, not the first sort of all black show that had been shown, but it was one of the very first sort of show where they sort of black people just being normal, just working, just being that. It was just a show about people that happened to be black.
No stereotypes in it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that was so. It was kind of important for the advancement of diversity of representation on TV.
Yes, I agree.
In that respect, and also as well, reading around about it, most of the crew as well were black as well. So it came from. Good. Authentic sort of
diverse origins, yeah. Excellent.
Yeah, and I think that's quite, that was, it was on Channel 4, and that was part of Channel 4's remit, wasn't it, to do that sort of thing, and that's why it was good. 5th of January, though, also, Doobie Duck's Disco Bus.
Yeah.
I don't remember this at all. Do you remember this?
I hate Doobie Duck and all it stands for. Yes, I do remember. I remember Doobie Duck. I remember Doobie Duck's stupid band. I remember the stupid covers they used to do with a stupid band. Roger Stevenson, you've got a lot to answer for, because that was the guy that was the puppeteer. He was also the guy that was behind the Diddy Men.
Oh, dear.
So, and if you really want a terrifying proposition, just look at the picture that I've put there of Doobie Duck. In fact, it'll scare you nothing well. And then go to the website, Roger Stevenson's website, and it's terrifying.
I'm not going.
It's just a collection of puppets' eyes. It's really odd.
Oh, that's anyway, unpleasant. That sounds like a horror film waiting to happen.
I mean, he's classed as a puppeteering genius, Roger Stevenson. Okay. Some say genius, some say he created a really scary, massive-headed duck.
Yeah,
I'll leave that to your imagination. I don't like it, though.
You
Even
say
looking at it
potato,
freaks me out.
I say massive-headed
It's
duck.
got red... What duck has red and black eyes?
None.
Exactly. I don't care how many bow ties they put on him. Something wrong with that duck.
Duck in evil. Yeah.
It's duck in evil.
Oh dear. 6th of January is Making Out, which is a British television series shown by the BBC. It was created by Frank Rodham, Debbie Horsfield. It mixed comedy and drama in its portrayal of the women who worked on the factory floor at New Line Electronics in Manchester, tackling the personal lives of the characters as well as wider issues of recession, redundancy and retrenchment as the factory goes through various crises and takeovers.
The sound funny.
Yeah, well, I think it's one of those very kitchen sink type. Sort of like that. The humour comes from full Monty style humour. That sort of, that kind of British Ken Loach, where we find the humour in those.
Okay.
Oh, I slit its throat. That sort of thing.
Yeah.
Interestingly, the soundtrack to this was done by the other two, who are the couple out of New Order.
Okay. I thought you were going to say Doobie Duck then. I was like, oh my God.
We're making out.
Doobie Duck's got that kind of accent noise like that, isn't it? Let's go, let's Doobie Duck, everyone.
Which would have fitted, yeah.
And then you just hear a shotgun sound, and then it'd be like, oh no.
And then that dog would pick it up from Duck Hunt.
Yeah. Oh, that's the dream. That's the dream.
That is the dream. 6th of January is Round a Bend. I've never heard of this, but I had a watch of it. The program was created by the team behind the comic Oink.
Yeah, I've read that. Interesting.
So it's weird.
I don't remember ever seeing it, though.
No, the puppets, animated characters, and main sewer set were designed by Patrick Gallagher, who was also the programme's graphic designer. The puppets were made by the team who made the one for Spitting Image. It was a satirical parody of Saturday morning magazine shows with the host providing linking material between cartoons, music videos, and news reports, albeit set in a sewer. The animated sketches were produced by Catalyst Pictures, who made the crudely drawn cell animations, and Aardman Animations.
Yeah.
Interesting. They made the clay animated serials. Weirdly enough, there's a link here. I've linked to one of them. They did Wee Man and the Masters of the Looniverse.
Yeah, I watched that. Yeah.
Wee Man, I've come for you, skeleton face. That made me laugh quite a bit.
Yeah, the little toaster guy made me, all the names of the stupid characters. They got that down to a fine art there.
Yeah, so that didn't make me laugh. I have no memory of this, though. None. No. Don't remember it at all. 7th of January, Superboy.
Did you see the intro for it?
I did not watch this, no. I may need to.
It's exactly as you remember it to be, only for some reason he looks like a really ugly John Travolta.
That's going some. I never thought John Travolta was a particularly handsome man. That was the problem.
But for some reason they decided to make a Superboy version, and that's not a boy, is it? Sorry, but it's not. That's clearly a guy.
No, that's an American boy. That's American TV teenager. When they're all 31, like Luke Perry in Baywatch.
Yeah,
not Baywatch.
Sideshow Luke Perry.
In thingy. What was it? Not Baywatch. What was the
Beverly Hills 90210?
Beverly Hills. That's the one. Yeah. No, yeah. I don't really remember this at all.
No,
but I imagine it was crap. I thought did it have any link to what's its face, Lois and Clark, or
no? I don't. It's part of the more traditional Superman universe, but that's as much as I know.
All right.
So it was based on the comic book character or Superboy, and so there is one. But I tune out at Superman. Fine. After that, super things, girl,
super
boy,
dog.
Dog, cat, whatever. No, antelope, not me. Not for me.
No. 8th of January is Agatha Christie's Poirot. This ran for 24 years.
Still going.
Can't be stopped.
There was a movie of Poirot not that long ago.
Really?
Murder on the Train one, yeah. With
wow.
I can't remember who it was who played him now. A famous British actor played him.
Not David Suchet? You on about?
No. It's a feature film.
Oh, the Poirot. Yeah, no, it was Kenneth Branagh. You on about the Kenneth Branagh ones? Because they're remaking the film ones. They're doing the Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express.
They're still going with these Poirot mysteries.
Yeah, the Poirot ones. But this one, the David Suchet one.
Yeah, it's well popular. He was good at it as well.
My mum loved this. She watched it religiously on ITV3 when it was just constantly on.
Yeah, can imagine.
Ran for 13 series, 70 episodes, and each episode was adapted from a novel or short story by Christie that featured Poirot. At the programme's conclusion, which finished with Curtain, Poirot's Last Case, every major literary work by Christie that featured the title character had been adapted.
That's unusual. They don't only do everything, do they? That's pretty unusual.
That's obviously why it ended, because they'd run out.
They run out, yeah. It turns out that Christie had been murdered by somebody in a library with a candlestick, and they couldn't figure out who did it. But
unfortunately, she didn't write it down, so Poirot couldn't work it out.
The only person who could have solved it was a fictional character, but since she died, she couldn't create the next one to figure it out.
Nope.
The irony of it all, really.
Absolutely. It's the we call it the Christie dilemma.
The paradox, yeah, the Christie paradox.
Christie paradox, yeah. Someone is killed, and the only person who can figure it out
is the fictional character that they created.
Yeah, that's it. The Christie paradox. 13th of January is a bit of a do.
I saw a few of them. They were kind of chuckle television, not side splitty, sort of light comedy drama, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it was David Jason again, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's heavily marketed on the back of David Jason as well at that point.
Yeah, it was, because each episode was a bit of a do, wasn't it? It was like a celebration.
They were at a do, yeah.
So it was at a wedding or a wake or a christening or birthday.
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. And
so everyone
happened,
was, and it went from there. Yeah. 13th of January, a bit of Fry and Laurie.
Yeah, good little sketch show.
Yeah. So this was Cambridge Footlights members Stephen Fry and Hugh Laurie. As in the two Ronnies, elaborate wordplay and innuendo were staples of its material. Frequently broke the fourth wall.
Were.
Yeah, characters would revert into their real-life actors mid-sketch. The camera would often pan off set into the studio. In addition, the show was punctuated with non-sequitur vox pops in a similar style to the Monty Python's Flying Circus, often making irrelevant statements heavily based on wordplay. It was very wordy, wasn't it? I seem to remember it being very...
It was very wordy. I think that's the Stephen Fry part. And it's also pretty physical for Hugh Laurie. He was often getting hit with things and clipped across the ear and whacked by Stephen Fry, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, they would go on to do Jeeves and Wooster, wouldn't they?
Jeeves and Wooster, yeah. And I mean, they were quite a good double act for a while, Fry and Laurie, I thought.
Yeah, I did as well. 16th of January, Press Gang.
Never watched an episode of it, but for some reason I know that Dexter Fletcher was in it.
Dexter Fletcher was in that, yes. I did watch some of them when it first started, but I think it was very... It was of that kids being far too knowing for what kids are, being far too just annoying. Yeah. Julie Sawalha was in it as well. She was the lead, or the head of the Press Gang, the paper they were making. She was the daughter in Absolutely Fabulous. Ab-Fab.
Absolutely, and he's quite a big director now, of course, isn't he?
What, Dexter Fletcher?
Yeah, he directed Rocket Man, I think.
Well, yeah, okay. I remember him mostly from the Rachel papers, but there you go.
Well, you would remember him for that. But yeah, he's directed quite a few films and been in quite a few, hasn't he? So.
Yes, yeah. He does quite a lot. 22nd of January was Campion.
No.
Another. I think, is this another Peter Davison's Albert Campion? It's another one in those converted mysteries one. This seems to be peak conversion of, written detectives getting made into TV shows.
Some bloody names in that one, though, isn't there?
Well, Brian Glover
as manservant. Magus Fontaine Lug.
Lug, yeah, I read that.
And Andrew Burt as his policeman friend, Stanislaus Oates.
Well,
what?
Yep, who knows?
Be called anything, be called Magus Fontaine.
There's a good name, Magus Fontaine Lug.
It'd be Mags, wouldn't it? Call me Mags, will ya? Be Mags, yeah.
This is rumour control. 25th of January, Young Charlie Chaplin.
Ugh, no.
Don't remember anything about it.
Not a massive fan of old Charlie Chaplin, so...
I was always more a fan of middle-aged Charlie Chaplin. That's when I think he was at his peak. 28th of January, finally, is Midnight Caller.
I remember it, but I don't remember ever watching one because it never appealed to me, the whole sort of, shock jock type talk show thing.
Yeah. There was a slew of films. There's things like Talk Radio as well at the time, weren't there? I think this was around that time.
Because we didn't have anything like that, did we? Talk Radio, that came on to Britain on the back of some of these things, I think, because we ended up with Talk Radio and stuff, didn't we? With
James
Whale and people like that.
I was going to say, James Whale, was he must have been around at this point, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, and he was, it's not on TV yet. It must be imminent.
It must have been on radio.
But he was on radio, definitely. You could Google it. I'm pretty sure he's on probably Talk Radio, or it must be starting any time now.
Yeah. So that kind of ring in chat show and say outrageous things and stuff, but which would obviously sort of peak with people like Howard Stern and stuff like that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, completely, totally. But I know. And if you want to watch a really good film based around that with some weirdness, go and watch Pontypool because it's brilliant.
It is indeed. I thought you were going to say Private Parts then, the Howard Stern film, which is actually quite good as well.
That is also good. Yeah.
Yeah. That was good as well. But yeah, didn't this one end off with his catch line? What was it? Good night, America, wherever you are, or something? I seem to remember that.
Something like that. Yeah, there was. He was the Nighthawk, wasn't he? There was some tagline he came out with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Anyway, there you go. Midnight Caller. On to films. There were 4 released on the 6th of January. War Requiem.
Derek Jarman movie. No thanks.
No, not for me. Something called Souvenir.
Not heard of that one.
Partnered with Novelties, Party Tricks.
Souvenirs, novelties. You forgot your fake dog poo. What? Fake dog poo.
And now I've clapped. It's gone everywhere. Also, if you didn't fancy either of those two, why would you? You could go and see Young Guns.
I haven't watched that in ages, actually. Do you remember much about it? I remember the stylization of it, but I
remember the second one got a lot bigger reception, I think, than the first one. People seem to go a lot bigger. Was it because the second one did that have the Bon Jovi stuff in Blaze of Glory and stuff? Was that the second one? Or was that the first one?
I don't know. I think it might be the first one, but you'd have to do a quick check on that. Could be wrong.
Let's have a look. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's essentially the Wild West Brat Pack, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
So it's Emilio Estevez, Keith Sutherland, Lou Diamond Phillips. They're this rough, Charlie Sheen. It's the story of Billy the Kid and stuff, isn't it? William H. Bonney, Doc. What's his name?
It's a very stylized retelling of this story about them with the brat, like you say, the Brat Pack version of the time. So
yeah, I can't remember. I'm sure I know because obviously the Bon Jovi song was in one of them.
The song's called Young Guns, isn't it? There's a song by them called Young Guns. They call them Young. Down, 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 down.
It would have had a much different feel if it had been the Wham song.
Yes, Young Guns are having some fun. Crazy, lazy, keep them on the run.
See, that's a mashup I'd like to see. To hear that one too.
By matrimony.
Yeah, Charlie. Just Dermot Mulrooney was Dirty Steve Stevens.
But I don't know much about the story of it other than it's about cowboys.
Well, it's about Billy the Kid, isn't it? Because I think did he get killed in it, and then so he's not in the second one? Is he in the second?
No
one?
idea. No idea. Again, it's that long since I watched it. I can't remember.
Yeah. Also, if you fancied something completely different, you could have gone and seen Dead Ringers.
You could.
This is David Cronenberg's Dead Ringers. Oddly enough, this has just been turned into a TV show with Rachel Weisz as the lead instead of Jeremy Irons. It's on Amazon Prime. This show is brought to you by Amazon Prime. I've not watched this in a long time. The thing what I remember about this and sort of watching a couple of clips, some very clever early split screen special effects in this. It's the shots of the twins on screen together. Because basically the film is, if you haven't seen it, it's a film about two twins who are sort of surgeons and they're preoccupied with some quite odd surgery, body horror surgery. It's a Cronenberg film, so you kind of know what to expect. And they're very sort of they're not Siamese, but they're very, very joined. Yeah, they're gynecologists. They're very, very joined, as in thingy. And then there's one of them falls in love, and that woman comes between them, and it all kind of spirals out of control from there. And the shots of the twins on screen together, because they're both played by Jeremy Irons, were accomplished through one of the first uses of computer-controlled moving matte photography.
It's good. I mean, it's not Back to the Future 2 good, but it is pretty good from there.
Yeah, there's some clever stuff in Back to the Future 2 and 3, but this is another very
incredibly clever, amazing stuff in that. But it's all pretty good. And of course, it's got lots of kinky shit in it. It
has, yes. It's very much to that sort of ilk. It's not my favourite Cronenberg film. It's not one of my favourites. No. But it's okay. It's okay.
And remember that I think Jeremy Irons said that he played the one character with one pair of shoes. I think he said I can't remember if he said when he played one of the brothers, he put shoes on that were too small, so it made him walk slightly differently. So he had a slightly different gait. Which made him feel like a different character, stuff like that, which is, a sign of a good actor.
Yeah, he played one on the balls of his feet and one going backwards or something.
Like that, yeah. Going backwards?
I don't know, resting backward. Well, if you're on the balls of your feet, I assume that means you're on your...
I thought you meant he was like walking backwards on the set, like, I wish he'd walk forwards, because it's just confusing everybody. It's so hard to act with somebody that acts backwards.
Yeah, he made everyone call him as well, Jeremy Zinks.
God's sake.
So he can feel it's two different people.
We wouldn't call him Jeremy, would they? That's not even his character's name.
Yeah, but so he could get into it. Jeremy Zinks today.
Call me by my actual name. That'll help me get into character.
It's how all the best actors work.
It's totally method. I get it. It's a weird method, but I like it.
It's the only method. The only method Jeremy Irons and Jeremy Zinks could get into.
Jeremy Zinks. That's his Mexican non-union equivalent.
And weirdly enough, that was the only first metal that came to my head first.
Zinc. Of all the metals you could choose, any metal out there. Aluminium.
But it's too long. It needed to be 4 letters.
Zinc, honestly.
Jeremy Zinks.
Right. Okay. Random.
A week later, you could have gone and seen Red Heat, 13th January.
You could have done that.
And I did. This was one of the first, not the first, but certainly I was underage to go see this because it was an 18. So I went to see this on my own at the cinema. I convinced them I was 18 with my strong mullet and bum fluff moustache.
They wouldn't question you. Martin Grimsby.
No one would. I remember not being particularly impressed with it. It's got a weird... I watched the intro to it earlier on. I thought I had a look at the intro. It's a very, very bizarre intro in that sort of Russian steam room thing. And then there's that fight out in the snow with just Arnie and these other two big guys and just nothing but sort of groin towels.
Yeah, micro towels, yeah.
It's just ridiculous. The sound effects are so over the top. It's just ridiculous. It's awful. Film. It's dreadful. There's lots of and the kind of Arnie grunts.
Which can only mean we've got the game coming soon.
The game?
Yeah,
the game. Oh, yeah. There's a Red Heat game. Yes, that is coming where it's all played from just the waist up.
Thank God.
I seem to remember.
Would you want to play it from the waist down only?
the only Commodore 64 game was Micro Towels.
And Schwanzstuckers.
Anyway, what do you think of this film?
I haven't watched it in ages and ages and ages, and there's a reason for that. I don't remember it being very good at all. I remember it being... I actually remember liking Jim Belushi, because I quite like Jim Belushi as an actor at this time. He was in quite a few things. But I don't particularly remember Red Heat from it. It's not one of the great Arnie films that you remember, is it? It's in the list, but it's not a Running Man, or it's not a Predator or anything.
No, it's not. It's not camp enough to be Running Man.
No, he's deadly serious, and it should really have been played by the guy that played Ivan Drago, shouldn't it? Really, I mean,
Dolph
if you're going to
Lundgren.
get a guy, Dolph Lundgren should really have been that guy in Red Heat, but perhaps there was some weird casting shenanigans going on there.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, it's not one of Arnie's best. It's kind of it's in that it's not Raw Deal bad, but it's not
Hercules.
No, it's true. 20th of January, after Arnie, you could have gone and seen Tom Cruise in Cocktail.
Ugh, God, this film.
Yeah, I don't like this. I never got on with it.
You mean you don't want to have a drink at Cocktails and Dreams?
No, there's too much drink throwing for my liking, which obviously is to do with it. There's barely any plot. There's more drink throwing than plot. This is full on high concept, no depth, 80s shallowness. It's basically there to push an actor and a soundtrack.
I couldn't find out if this was one of the films that was in the famous deal that they struck.
What the the Days
Simpson
of Thunder?
and Bruckheimer, yeah, they struck a famous $300 million film deal with the studio. Then they just said, "Look, just make us a series of films," and it was all on the back of Top Gun, I think.
Yeah.
Days of Thunder came out of that, and I have a feeling Cocktail may or may not be one of them. I could be wrong, or is it something to do with it? But it's Tom Cruise acting like an obnoxious arsehole, and Brian Brown, the ugly Crocodile Dundee of film. Being all womanizery and schmoozy. It's like, no.
Everyone likes him in FX, Murder by Illusion.
Yeah, he's good in that, but he's not good in this. It's just, he just comes over as a sleazy, demure. It's not very nice.
No, it's Cocktail. It's just, it's a froth of a film.
It's nothing to it, is there? Nothing. And
No.
It's just Tom Cruise coming of age a bit, isn't he? He's stepping out of risky business mode into Cruise the man as opposed to Cruise the boy.
Yeah. Just look how well I can toss a drink.
Yeah,
not
there's
for
loads
me.
of that in that.
Not
There's that
for
other
me.
film. It's like what's the one where it's set in a bar where they're throwing drinks around like that? I forget. It's them.
The women one.
Where she sings singing all the time.
It begins with a C, doesn't
Like
it?
Coyote Ugly, isn't it?
Coyote Ugly, that's the one, yeah.
It's like an early version of that.
Yes, it probably is. 27th of January, Gorillas in the Mist.
Yes, it's a biopic. Have you written there? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a biopic. Diane Fossey, who was a campaigner for the protection and the stopping of hunting and killing wild gorillas. So from about 1966 to 1985, she was in Africa and she was trying to stop essentially the poaching, illegal poaching trade of gorillas, where the actual number of gorillas went down to about 250 left, and she was very much thinking of that. And then one night she was killed. She was murdered in her hut. She was found in the morning,
Nice.
hacked in the face with a machete.
Oh, goodness.
Which is quite unpleasant. But this is the biopic that we had starred Sigourney Weaver in the titular role. Well, not titular role, but the Diane Fossey role. Again, this starred Brian Brown. A double Brian Brown week.
I know, here he is. I mean, the one thing that struck me about that, I mean, as horrific as that is a story, she spent her entire life looking out for them gorillas. Where were they when she needed them?
Well, the guy supposedly they found a hole in the wall where the attacker had got the way in. There was a guy who was committed for it, but he was convicted in absentia because they couldn't find him or something, but they're not quite sure. But since then, however, I think the gorilla population has gone up. There is a big foundation for anti-poaching and all that stuff. So, and there's a Fossey.
So good things came of it all.
So good things did come of it all. But I think this film won quite. This might have done quite well at the Oscars as well, but maybe not in Amadeus. I don't know. No, it would have. I think it did do quite well. But yeah, it's quite well regarded, this film, I think. Same day and completely at the opposite end of the spectrum.
Just a bit.
Is Phantasm 2.
What a glorious film Phantasm 2 is. It's glorious.
It's one of those where you just don't. I mean, at least it had conversations happening in the same room, unlike the first film, where every line was delivered in a different room when conversations were happening.
It was a way to avoid complicated issues around continuity.
Yeah. We don't need
just
continuity.
film every sentence in an alternative location. And Don Coscarelli, of course, famously made Phantasm on 56 pence and a packet of crisps. And then he got 2 bags of crisps for Phantasm 2.
And some bigger silver marbles.
They upped the budget, but to the tune of I think a couple of million maybe for Phantasm 2.
A dime bar.
And so but the thing I like about Don Coscarelli films, especially Phantasm 2, is that the money that he got, he didn't squander that money. Every single cent is in that screen. The house blows up. There's a fancy car. He's got a 4-barreled quad shotgun. There's more. They up the ante and all the gore and the effects of these silver balls. The story of Phantasm 2, the story of Phantasm, is impossible to explain what that's about. Even if you try, you sound like you're a crazy person.
Yes.
A grave-robbing tall man, ice cream sniffing tall man who has an army of midgets from another dimension is taking people to be crushed into midgets, I think. And he also has an army of silver robot balls at his command.
Which sort of suck your brains out if they
they drill into you and pump out all of your blood via your brain hole.
Which that weapon, that thing, would go on to be quite clearly the cerebral bore in Turok 2 on the N64.
Yeah.
Which was the thing.
I'll take your word for it.
Well, it was a gun that you sort of aimed at people and it homed in on their heads, then chunked into their head, and then just basically sprayed their brains out.
Yeah, it's totally taken from that.
So that would led to that clearly.
I mean, like of all Phantasm movies, and there's I think 5 or 6 of them. I think it's quite a few.
There's a lot here.
But with this particular one, there's a really Phantasm 1 and Phantasm 2, they're both, I really like them because of their cheapness and because they're weird. There is no allusion to what they are in those things. They just throw in weird scene after weird scene that really doesn't make a lot of sense at all, but it doesn't ever try to make sense.
No.
Like, there is this really weird nihilistic end of the world kind of thing happening in that. All the graves are being emptied, and nobody seems to really know why. These entire towns that have been completely wiped out and deserted. And you've got Reggie and co sort of traveling around trying to make sense of this world where they're being followed by this sort of weirdness, and they end up going in mausoleums and being attacked. There's just a genuine sense of really unusual stuff going on in those films. And I like it for that. Yes, it's on a shoestring budget, and yes, the script is shocking, and yeah, it's really dumb in places, really dumb. But it doesn't try and wrap anything up in anything other than that. It is a low-budget horror movie, and it really loves being one. And there's some amazing sequences in that, considering the money it was made on. From that same sort of school of thinking as your Evil Deads. Mm-hmm. And whether you like them or not, you look back at them now with a modern lens, and you go, "Oh my gosh, they're terrible." And maybe they are in one sense, but this has got a really great soundtrack. It's got a really talented director, Don Coscarelli, and certainly for what he pulls together, and a genuine eye for interesting horror things. And that's what I like about it, in a way that I quite like the first Hellraiser for the same reason, because there's a genuine oddness about it. Hate some parts of it, but there's parts that I just, that I remember, the first time they go into the weird dimension and you see the sort of weird creatures and the dwarfs running around the house and him having to blow his house up together. Just stuff like that I really like. Quirky.
Have you watched the new ones?
I've seen them all, yeah.
So the 1 and 2, have you seen there's an animated one?
I've not seen an animated one, but
from
the last one I watched.
2017, which is a direct sequel to Phantasm 2.
Yeah, they don't get better.
The last one is Ravager, I think is the last one.
Yeah, that's the last one I saw, I think.
2016.
They sort of, that one I think was crowdfunded. I think that's Kickstarter funded.
Oh, really?
Because a lot of the, these Phantasm and Phantasm 2 gained a massive cult following. They're hugely popular in Cultsville. And you can sort of see why they've got cult written all over them. The later ones, Phantasm 3 was quite good in its own way, but they try and advance the story in ways that you don't need to. You don't need to. There is weirdness in all of them, but you don't need to try and advance what they're doing. And, they're just trying to add more depth to things that simply didn't have any depth. And that was the appeal. The minute you do that, you start to lose a little bit of what made them a Phantasm movie. The cheapness and the weirdness is what I really like about them, and always have. But they're not for everyone. They're certainly not for everyone.
No, and they're certainly very different to Gorillas in the Mist.
Yeah, you can guess what? If you were still in the cinema looking at which one should we go and see. That depends on how you're going to be perceived after that. You got to make that decision. If you're taking your girlfriend out, do you want to be perceived as the caring gorilla guy? Or the crazy horror guy, are you going to be? Yeah,
one's going to keep your relationship, I think, going, and one's going to end it.
You decide which.
Yeah, it's up to you. There you go. That was it. That's film and TV for January 1989. I hope you enjoyed that. There was some interesting stuff there. We're going to go away, take a quick break. We'll be back. We've got how many games? We've got 4 more games still to get through, haven't we?
We do.
4 more games still to get through. Crapverts as well. We've got Crapverts from January. So we'll be back in a moment. So please do stay around. And we're back. We're back with 4 more games. Let's get into them. Let's waste no time. Our first one, Graham, let's take a risk. Is Risk. Anyone for a quick game of Risk? No.
Is there ever such a thing?
No, it was an in-joke. Me and Pete always used to say, my friend Pete always used to say to each other, what should we do tonight? Quick game of Risk? No, there's no such thing as a quick game of Risk. Anyway, it's another week. It's another board game adaptation for the Christmas market. Remember, all these games were probably coming out just before Christmas, 1988. So it's like, So, this is going on that thought of why get the dull cardboard version of the game? Bits go missing. No one knows where all the dice are. You can have the shiny computer version where the bits never go missing and dice are plentiful. Well, in the case of Risk, there are a few reasons to get the board game variant, I would argue, over this one, but we'll get to those in a bit. This was released under Virgin Games, produced by the Gang of Five, coding done by Tony Smith, and graphics by Nicole Bykaloff. For those who do not know what Risk is, let me educate you with this from the grand source of all knowledge, Wikipedia. Risk was invented by French film director Albert Lamouris, and originally released in 1957 as La Conquête du Monde, which is the conquest of the world. That was released in France. It was bought by Parker Brothers and released in 1959 with some modification to the rules as Risk, the continental game, then following that as Risk, the game of global domination. And that's what Risk is. The game is played by 2 to 6 players and tasks each player generally with taking over the world with their own forces and armies. So this is a board game. You put stuff down. The board that this is played on has 42 territories covering a map of the world, an entire map of the world. So it's not all the countries. Some countries are grouped together and blah, blah, but you've got 42 different territories that cover this, cover the map of the world. And now I'm not going to go into all the rules of Risk here. All right. I'm just not. Otherwise, we'll be here for quite a while. I'm not going to do that. Suffice to say, it's a game of strategy where the aim is to grow your empire and basically destroy everyone else and just take over the world. That's what you got to do. So the C64 version, well, it takes a while to load, this one. It comes in both a disc variant and cassette variant. So for most of this review, I'll talk about the disc variant. If I'll mention any differences for the tape version at the end, or as we go through. Upon loading, we agree with a partial view of the world that takes up the majority of the screen, and that's on the left of the screen. It's an odd layout, but you kind of get, so it's a zoomed in view of part of the world map. On the right is a compass and a representation of the cards using the game that you can use. And there's some options across the top, which are setup, play, cards, and information. At this stage, only setup can be chosen, and this allows you to play variations of the game, such as a standard game. You can set custom variants. You can play the UK or you can play the US version of the game. All have slightly different rules and things that are going on, and stuff like that. You can also opt for long or short versions of the game. And even if you play the short version of the game and you finish it in what you need to do, you can actually then opt to carry on to the long version, take over, whatever. You can also opt to whether have continuous or separate attacks. That don't quite work as well as you think it might do. I'll come to that in a bit. You can reverse the map scroll if you want to. I don't know why you would. And if you play a custom game, there are more options to fine-tune your Risk experience. But I'll be honest, I just went into a standard game. Dang. So I'm not that much of a Risk aficionado. Whatever, it's Risk. So you click OK, asks you how many players you want. And this affects the number of armies you get to place. So you get less armies the more people are playing at the start of the game. So after you input a name, you select whether this is human or computer player. You can, have all computers if you want, or you can just have one person. You're up to 6. You need at least 2. So you can have one player human and play against 5 computer opponents. That's okay. And each computer one can be set to have one of 3 levels of skill, level 1, 2, or 3. I presume 1 is dumb as a post. 3 is, a bit cleverer, I guess. After that, and you select your color for each player as well, so what you're going to take over. And then from there, you can set it, depending on what variant you've taken, you get to either select the territories that you wish to start with, or the computer will randomly assign territories to each player and will go through them. Once they've all been picked or assigned, you then, any extra units you have, because each area takes 1 unit, you place one of your armies in there. Then once everything's chosen, you can then reinforce your territories that you own with extra armies, depending on where you are on what you want to place and where you want to put your strength. That's how this game is played. It's onto the game, and this is just follows pretty much the standard format of Risk. So players, you're reinforced, you get reinforcements and more number of armies, and you can place them where you want, depending on how many territories you control. And that also depending on whether you own entire continents or sections, you get sort of a boost should we say, to how many you get in. You can then choose to attack enemy territories, and in doing so, you get to decide how many dice you want to throw. So there's 3 for an attack. For in risk, you can throw up to 3 dice for an attack, 2 if you're defending. It's up to you how many you want to roll, but you have to have at least 3 when you're attacking to roll 3 dice, and you have to have at least 3 when you're defending to roll 2 dice, because you've got to keep one in there, or it's the other way around. I can't remember which. It's risk. The basic rules of risk apply. So whether you roll the dice, who wins which ones, is how many enemies you kill or how many you lose until the attacking's done. That's what it is. So essentially, this is the turn of the thing. Everyone takes a turn. You choose where you want to attack. Whether you win or lose, you go through the process, and then you reinforce and repeat, and rounds go on and games go on, and that's it. It's it. That's risk, and so the basic rules of risk apply here. If you want a computer version of risk, I guess this plays an acceptable game of risk. It's okay. It's it. The question, as with all these conversions, is how does it compare to the original, to the board game? And I think in that regard, this does lose out in one really meaningful way, and that's the map. The main issue is the amount of map that you can see at any one time, which is not a lot. So the map itself is probably, you can scroll around it, but it's about 4 times bigger than the viewing area in both directions. So the way you move this around, you can either move your sword, you've got a sword as your cursor, as you're sort of choosing what to do, to the edge of the map. So you can move it up, top, up, bottom, left or right, and it will then flick a whole screen in that direction. Okay, so if you keep going to the right, flick 4 times, and it will loop back round, down to the bottom, 4 times. So it's like 16 squares make up the map, but you can only see one of them at any given moment. Alternatively, you can click on the compass that's on the UI, and this allows you to quite slowly, very slowly and quite jerkily scroll the map around, because it basically gives you a sort of, your joystick becomes a scroll, and it sort of character scrolls around. So it's quite jerky, which is quite unpleasant to look at, but you can fine tune it a bit and whatever, but it's not very nice to look at. So you can scroll around so you get to the part of the map you want to go to. In the disc version, you can see a map of the world, but this is a separate load for some reason. I don't know why. It takes ages to load as well. It just gives you a map of the world, and then you go back to the game. It's like that. And so because it's a separate load, that option is omitted from the tape version, which seems odd. I couldn't see much else difference in the tape version, but that definitely is gone. There's probably maybe some other differences as well. So because the thing is, seeing the board, it's a rather important, seeing the board as a whole is rather important risk. Yeah, it's critical. And only being able to see a fraction of it reduces the tactical information available to you, because you kind of got to remember where everything is when you go in to make your moves, and how you're moving, and what you want to take over, and how you want to progress, and where you want to advance or stay strong, whatever. Add to that moving around is, as I said, clunky, slow, and jerky. And just playing this game suddenly feels more awkward than it should do, and a lot more awkward than the board game, which is all that information right out in front of you at all times. You're looking at the board. It's got all the map on it, and you can see all the enemies, every territory, how many are in them. It's all information that's there. So that's a big downer on this version. There's also the issue of how you attack. So to attack anything, you have to go to the play menu, scroll it down to attack, then select where from, so what territory you want, and that means scrolling the board around and stuff, where you want to attack to, and then it'll start rolling dice. Now, even if you press continuous attack, it will falter. If the attack falters, so if you lose, it'll stop. It'll go, no, attack stopped. But I told you to just continue. If I say continue, then just keep going. If you do this, you've got to then go back to the menu and select continue attack, which then continues the attack. If you lose again, it stops again. This soon becomes very laborious, having to go back to a menu, select something, back to a menu, select something. I don't know why this one just simply set to the A key. You could have just pressed A to attack and then selected where you wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then a simple, because you set A, and then if the attack falters, do you wish to continue attacking? Yes or no? I would have simplified that entire process from a sort of UI layout, interaction, interface, way of doing it. You're like, okay, you've lost a couple there. Do you want to keep attacking here? Yes, thanks. Keep going. Right, okay. You've lost another one. Do you want to go? Yes. Not having to send me back to that bloody menu, find the attack option, do it again, falter, back to the menu, find it. It's a pain. So it makes what is already quite a slow game, quite a jerky game, even slower and more awkward to play. So, yeah, there's not much more to say. It's an admirable attempt to bring Risk to the C64. The ability to play against the computer does offer something over the board game, because you can, if you're into Risk and you want to play, it sometimes can be hard to get people to, get in on a game of Risk. So if you're really into it, you've got the opportunity to play 6-player game against 5 computer people. But the interface and the slow and jerkiness of the visuals, they don't entice you to play this for long. It just gets a bit wearing, I think. So for me, this is certainly one, where we quite like the Trivial Pursuit one because it offers something a bit different. This is certainly one where the board game, I think, would be far more preferable than this version, even if you could play it in single player. But yeah, it's okay, but it's just let down by some UI problems for me. What did you think?
Same, pretty much exactly the same. I mean, it's been a long while since I played Risk. It was one of the family board games that we had back in the day. That was when you had family board games, that the whole family would at a certain point play. It's in the same, you had some kind of timeshare in them, didn't you, as a kid here? Monopoly, Cluedo, Payday, Game of Life, Scrabble, Chess, and Risk. They were kind of the family stalwart games that you had, you had them.
Yeah.
So it would have found its way at least once or twice to our dining room, on the big table. Would have played it on the big table.
Yes.
The main thing with this is, A, you'd have to like Risk, and B, you'd have to be able to put up with the nuances of the way it plays out on a TV screen.
Yeah.
I played the disc version because that's what I probably would have played if I'd had it back in the day. It was competent enough, I suppose, in terms of the mechanics of Risk. The way you could select types of play and all of that stuff. Graphics were okay for what they were, but like you said, it all starts to come undone because it feels very methodical and ploddy. Scrolling is jerky and slow. Selecting things is jerky and ploddy and slow. It slows the pace of the game down, and because you can't see the whole map, it disadvantages you in a very strategic way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that then makes the game less exciting to play, and that's the real problem of it. It's not very exciting, and Risk isn't in of itself known for its great excitement. But when you've got when you've got the cusp of winning the game, where you've got lots of countries, all of the different pieces on and things like that, it does feel like you've got a good view of what's going on. And if you're into that kind of game, you need that. Without that, or with that silly loading version, no, it doesn't have that. And even the rolling digital dice is not the same as rolling them physically. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you can accept all of those caveats, then you can play Risk, and you can, and exactly for the same reason you said. If you don't have enough friends to play it with, you've got your Billy no mates or a Billy Risky no mates, then this is maybe an option for you that you have. But it does have all the pieces, like you say. Yes, it does have all the dice, and yes, all of those things. They're all plus points, I suppose. It's just a matter of it is a bit slow. It is a bit eerily silent, and I think it does detract from the game itself because you can't get that worldview, the whole worldview properly. Other than those things, it's also a pretty heavy price tag at $12.95. It wouldn't have been much less for the board game.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I think that's the tape version as well. I think it was $15 for the disc version.
So I think I would have been happy with the board game. I would personally, but that said, maybe it's something that people who are new to Risk might like. I don't know. Yeah,
and also as well, I mean, it doesn't even roll dice, does it? The dice just appear.
Yeah, it just appear on that thing, and it is what it is. If you were new to Risk and this was your experience of it, you probably find this might be more preferable to the board game.
Might be.
But if you played the board game, you wouldn't go for this, I don't think. So
no.
But it is underneath the engine a Risk game. It does play Risk, so okay, fair enough.
I think 61% it got. I think that's about fair. I think
I'd say so.
Yeah, there we go. That's Risk. We're sticking with strategy. God, it's strategy heavy this half. As we move on to our next one. Graham, it's your turn to take us around Star Trek, the Rebel Universe.
Okay, this is quite interesting, actually. Published by Firebird. Copyright, obviously, Paramount Pictures. 81% this got from the Zapped team. Produced by G.P. Everett, Stephen Kane, and one Mike Singleton. And don't you bloody know it. And the conversion was Fawad Katan. And the musician was David Dunn. Music isn't bad. It starts. You only hear it at the beginning. It's the Star Trek music, so it's not a bad version.
It's okay, yeah.
Yeah, quite an interesting Star Trek game, and the last one on the C64. The last licensed one.
Oh.
In this game, we find ourselves in troubled times for the Federation, aren't they always? For some time, an area of space has been designated as a Federation quarantine zone due to a peculiar, unexplained phenomenon. A whole bunch of Starfleet ships and their crews, 20 in fact, have entered that system just off the shoulder of Sagittarius and gone renegade, taking up sides with the Klingons. WTF, Adrian.
Good Lord.
No one knows how or why this is happening, and worse still, the fear is that this infection may well spread. That's right. Although relatively localized to an area around the Decaic star, this mutiny sphere, quote unquote, is expanding at an accelerated rate, and that means trouble. So, what to do? I know. Send in the Enterprise to investigate. That's the best plan. Yes, send in your most powerful starship where 20 previous starships have already lost the plot. Works. So in classic Federation style, they plan to send in the Enterprise and its crew to find out what the hell is going on around Decaic
and put a stop to it. But after the Enterprise enters the quarantine zone, they also plan to encase the area of space and everyone in it within a Klein sphere, an interstellar barrier through which no material object can pass. Just in case things go south, I guess. So nothing says, I think, that you've got faith in your mission, like putting them in an interstellar unpassable barrier for the rest of the time if they fail. Just saying.
No.
So, your mission is to discover the cause of this mutiny, and suspicion inevitably falls on the Klingons. Then you've got to reverse its effects within a 5-year time period. If the Enterprise succeeds, thousands of stars within the quarantine zone and planets will be saved, the Klein sphere will be dissolved, and the quarantine lifted. Cube, Bill, and Ted style air guitar. If it fails, the Enterprise and its crew are condemned to eternal imprisonment within the Renegade Zone, and Starfleet Command will be forced to make the final adjustments to the Klein sphere and make it a permanent fixture in space. As Bill and Ted would say, bogus.
Bogus.
Oh, and if that wasn't enough, there are some neutral Romulans dotted around in there too, adding more complication and probably Romulan ale to proceedings, so it's best to avoid any entanglements with them because they are greatly feared, but they are always neutral, but also always pissed off. So just got to avoid them. They're just there.
What turns a man neutral?
Once inside the Klein sphere, it doesn't take Kirk and the gang long to figure out what's been going on. Of course, the Klingons have discovered that a peculiar isotope of dilithium, known as dilithium delta-6, found only in the Declan 2 area of their space, acts as a telepathic amplifier. In particular, when linked to a major power source, such as a Starship's warp drive, dilithium delta-6 renders most sentient beings within range open to telepathic suggestion from a distance of light years. Therefore, the Klingons have developed a suggestion weapon, a suggestatron, a persuadatron, a convince-o-matic.
You're making this up now, aren't you?
And those devious Cornish pasty-foreheaded arseholes must not be allowed to get that kind of technology into the rest of Federation space, or it's Klingon blood burgers for everyone, forever. Can't have that.
Hack like hack the back.
Well said. I couldn't agree more. So this game is a curious blend of an elite Captain Blood type notion fused with Star Trek. A few game ideas and game styles kind of all rolled into one. You control the functions of the Enterprise using the quote-unquote multi-vision game system, or by vicariously selecting the crew members and operating the controls they are responsible for. You have all the regulars there, such as Kirk, Spock, McCoy, Scotty, Uhura, Sulu, and Chekhov, and each one is linked to a series of screens through which you navigate, battle, investigate, transport, etc., and otherwise figure out what is going on and sort out the Klingons within your 5-year time period. Your initial view is of the familiar bridge of the Enterprise, and around this are scanned 8-bit images of the crew. They look okay. They do at least resemble who they're meant to be. Mm-hmm. Either clicking on them or on the image of the bridge or clicking on their likeness will reveal the controls at their disposal. So Kirk has the captain's log, the transporter controls. Spock will give you information about worlds, is the science officer. Sulu will navigate. You can navigate between systems and between planets. Uhura has comms, although she doesn't actually have any controls. Bit alarming, that really. Scotty is on engineering, McCoy on medical, Chekhov on weapons. That's the end. It's all aligned to how it works in a TV show. You control a selector pointer in the shape of the Federation shield. With your joystick, clicking one of the 7 crew will bring up their screen, and then also around the edges it will suggest probable next actions and others, which isn't a bad way to work, all said and done. Quite nice the way it does that. So click on Sulu to navigate, and you will see the main window change, and then the items around that will change to suit maybe your next steps and what other things you can do. I like that. So adding power to the engines or asking Spock to do some planetary scanning and things like that, or sending out a message. It's actually a pretty nice way of working through some of the parts around, say, navigation and explosion, but then leaves other areas like combat, transporting and fuel management weirdly more painful than it probably needed to be. There's loads of systems to explore here, and they will all have combinations of habitable and other types of world around them for you to explore or get equipment from or get information from. Warping between these systems and then navigating around planets uses your fuel, your dilithium crystal, should I say, and that also means you'll get attacked more often than not by Klingons that seem to be just dotted about. Combat is an odd vector style affair that sees a vector-based version of the enemy hoy into view and start kicking off. This is where some of the controls get a bit fiddly, as you need to arm your weapons first, then aim and lock on, and then fire, which can become painfully and needlessly procedural and costly when you have a Klingon cruiser hurling photon torpedoes at you. So there is a bit of screen hopping at these points, which is a little bit takes you out of the action a little bit. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, you'll encounter info beacons and planets, like I said, you can explore. And as in the show, you're able to beam down up to 6 crew members to the surface. Each of the crew members has a particular skill. And on the surface, you essentially get a series of obstacles to contend with: locked electro doors, odd weapons, particle things, mysterious boxes of stuff. You can choose, and sometimes these are locked, and sometimes they have, weird things around them. And you can choose which member of your crew tackles them in a certain way. So Uhura will fire some kind of communication at them, and I think it's Sulu or one of them will fire the phaser at them and stuff like that. So you can choose which member tackles the object and the hazard, and the outcome ranges from, everything's okay, the door opens, or you get the thing,
to getting zapped and all of your crew have to go to sickbay to recover, all of which, of course, takes time. Remember, you are on a timeline for this game.
Mm-hmm.
So you will, therefore, over a long period of time, though most likely never, wander around the systems inside the quarantine zone looking for clues, items, and answers to stop the Klingons escaping with their deadly Persuadertron. You'll need to replenish your dilithium crystals or you'll run out of fuel. And these erode as you travel around the system, and there's places you can get those. Also, traveling takes time, even at warp speed. Remember, time is relative. So you need to factor that into your travels as well. According to the review on Lemon, there are also something called catastrophe pods in here that are a bit of a weird game breaker. Now, I didn't encounter any of these, at least as far as I know. And when I played it and read the instructions, I found no mention of them in the instructions that I had at all. But apparently these alien pods can, unbeknown to you, attach themselves to your ship when you enter a system and gradually over a 5-week period in terms of the game, eat the ship and destroy you, ending your game. According to the Lemon reviewer Jason Compton, and we'll put the link in the show notes, the only way to get rid of them is to find an orbital discontinuum, a planet whose feature is a wormhole which sends the Enterprise to a new system and has the convenient side effect of removing these pods. There is no way to know if a system has pods when you visit it, which means that it's quite possible that the very first planet you visit will hit you with pods, leaving you scrambling to find another nearby system with a discontinuum, or it's game over, which is a bit lame.
Yeah.
That's pretty naff thing to do, all said and done. And if that is the case, and I've no reason to doubt the reviewer, that leaves an entire element of the game with a random chance of death that you can do very little about, which is a great shame. You need to check on the status of the Enterprise pretty regularly throughout the game anyway, as all combat and travel takes its toll. But this notion of an invisible and over time deadly enemy that you may not even know about, and that sounds difficult to remove, that just sounds like a massive pain in the game. Apparently this, and the general scope of thousands of stars and planets inside a tiny C64 game, has the hand of Mike Singleton on it. And he's no stranger to this kind of notion, as we've seen in games like Lords of Midnight. You can save or load your game here, of course, so you don't actually have to spend 5 years sat at your C64, but the first or 8th time you die, either through flapping about the selection screen during combat, or via a catastrophe pod, will leave a bad taste in your mouth. Like Gone Off Tranya, that'd be. Anyway, that's a proper Star Trek joke, that is.
The Enterprise, that joke just whizzed past me like the Enterprise past the camera.
Some people would know what this is. The Corbinite maneuver, I think that episode's called. Anyway, so that's the Star Trek, though, isn't it? That's how it kind of plays out. The graphic combos work better in some places than others. The bridge and the crew graphics are okay. Some of the familiar images of Enterprise in orbit around the planet will satisfy, and I thought they looked pretty cool.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
The vectors are less successful. Not sure why they went down that road. And the exploration of the planets is somewhat vectory as well. Where it succeeds is that you do feel like you have control of the crew and you navigate around pretty successfully with the oral and visual Star Trek tropes that are all there. But the game is daunting, somewhat underplayed, and possibly a little even boring over time, just going, hopping around. Same reason we didn't like Captain Blood, maybe. The opening version of the Star Trek music is okay. The in-game sounds suitably familiar, the ooh, and all that kind of thing that you'll be familiar to Star Trek. For me, I needed more, I don't know, a little bit more Star Trek-y stuff, a little bit more musical interlude, maybe, just a little bit more show. Some of the imagery of the enemies and planets just needed to be a little bit up to, it would have been good to see some of, the famous screen with the Klingon warriors' heads on it, even if it was just a still. Just some of those little things like that would have added a little bit more to it. I think more pixel art, less vectors for me. The Klingon spaceships looked a bit like a broken toilet brush in vectors. That kind of thing doesn't suit me when I play these games. But there is a Star Trek game in here, Jim, just maybe not as we know it. And I thought it was all right. I thought it was okay, apart from that stupid bug. But I didn't counter it, but if it's there, silly. Yeah. So what did you think?
I mean, you can certainly see the influence of Mike, Lords of Midnight, Doom Dark's Revenge, Singleton on this. And obviously just as well, this was it was a depot, wasn't it? Because it was originally on the ST. So it came from the it came from the ST first of all. No Amiga version that I could see. Weird. Maybe there was, I don't know. But so, you trek around the universe with the crew of the Enterprise. I thought there was a pretty solid game here for people into Star Trek. I like the way that each part of the ship is controlled by the various members of the crew, and they've all, it's kind of divided in that way. So weapons is navigation and analysis and everything like that, and a bit of tinkering on each screen. With a bit of tinkering, I got moving. I shot some Klingons. The thing is, what I did is I approached it without looking at the instructions first of all, and I actually managed to work my way through it.
It's not difficult to figure out, is it?
No, it's not terribly unintuitive. There's some bits where I was a bit like, okay, because I kept getting that shot of the Enterprise in front of a planet. I was like, okay, what can I do with this? And there's some bits and bobs like that. So I mean, I went to the instructions and read a bit more, so I had to move around and stuff. I shot at some Klingons. I worked out how to put my phasers up and get to warp speed and all those kind of things. So as far as these kind of more cerebral games go, I thought this was fairly enjoyable. There's some nice visuals. I thought the actual digitizations, digital sort of representations of the crew were pretty good. They're recognizable. They're certainly better than some horrors we've seen. So yeah, I didn't get very far into it, I have to say. Whether I'll go back to it, probably not. I would say that this actually reminded me, if you squint a bit and think about what it is, sort of thing. There's early sort of echoes of something like Mass Effect in this.
Yeah, I'd see that. I can see that.
Because you're traveling around space with a crew on a bridge, going from planet to planet, trying to work something out and stop something happening. I mean, that's Mass Effect, especially Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
When Mass Effect 2 has its sort of scanning of planets to find stuff and locate things and going away on missions, and you've got your galactic map and you're flying about and you're flitting about. There's elements of and obviously Mass Effect takes a lot from Star Trek, so we can see that. But I think within the structure of this game and the way this game handles stuff and so traveling from planet to planet, I like the way that on the when you were in a system and you were on impulse and you were going around it, it sort of didn't just transport you there, but you could watch the map and see how fast you were getting towards a planet and things like that. There's some nice little graphic bits in this. So there's some things in this that I did really like. So it's got 81%. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think this was an interesting game. We don't normally say that about these kind of things, but I thought
one of the better Star Trek games, actually.
Yeah. Certainly was for the time and for it felt like Star Trek. I think some of the things you said, it could have the vector graphics were a bit of a misstep. I think they could have been done a bit differently. I'm not quite sure what. I mean, I don't know if we needed it. There's elements of PSI 5 I thought as well.
Yeah. That's what I was trying to think of the name of it. I think if it had a bit more accolade and less elite, I think it might have worked a bit better graphically, but it still works pretty good. But I think it would have just finished those battle sequences off to be a bit more like that.
I think so, yeah. But yeah, it was all right. Star Trek. Wasn't sure what to expect, but decent enough. Quite enjoyed it. There we go. Star Trek: The Rebel Universe, surprisingly okay. Let's move on. We've still got 2 left. And next up, Fast Break. This is Fast Break. Fast break. It's time to get back on the court with Accolade again. But unlike the ultra-slow sim version of tennis we had last week in Serve and Volley, this time it's Fast Break, a more arcadey version of the sport it is based on, and that is basketball. This was designed by Steve Cartwright. He's the man behind Hacker 2, things like that. It's got graphics by Roseanne Mitchell. And she would go on to work on loads of the sort of PGA games in the 90s, golf games and other sports games and stuff, various roles. And it was produced by Sam Nelson. Once the game loads, you've waited through a couple of well-drawn, but I don't know, I couldn't manage to skip them, title screens. Clearly brought to you by Nike.
Yeah, just a bit.
Nike. You get to see the court you're about to play on and some options allowing you to pick the time of play. It's quite simple. So you've got the courts at the top and your options are at the bottom. You've got a time of play. You can play 3, 6, 9 or 12-minute quarters. You can choose whether it's a 1 or 2-player game. 2-players game. There are 2 teams, like most of these Accolade games. They don't give you leads like it's just two teams. And in this, you got the Jammers or the Slammers. So you can play as either the Jammers, you can play as either the Slammers, or you can play a 2-player game. Again, one of you is the Jammers and one of you is the Slammers. That's up to you, I guess. And then you can either move on to choose your team and the set plays you can have, or you can choose to create your own plays if you want to. And you do this by positioning your team around the court at 4 different stages. Couldn't really get my head around that. I think I just made a confusing mess. My plays would never have worked. Everyone would just ran into each other in the center of the court at some point and all fallen over. It wouldn't have been very good. Anyway, moving on. You can choose from if you carry on. You can choose from 2 different sets of players for each position. You've got the center, the guard, and the forward. And it was nice to see some decent representation here with a good mix of ethnicity in the options. You've got a good split of different ethnic backgrounds in there, so that was quite good. Once you're happy with who you picked, you can then get to choose 4 plays from the 15 available in the playbook. So these are plays that sort of set plays that you can sort of trigger off during the game and will sort of play out or try to anyway. But it's up to you. You don't have to do any of them. You can just play a game of basketball. And you're into the game. Off you go. You start the game. The game is played out. Now, I found the way that this was sort of presented a bit weird. It's a weird, slightly scrolling split screen and seen from a sort of slightly isometric way, depending on which angle, which direction you're looking at. What this means is that your viewpoint, you kind of, as if you imagine you're slightly raised up in the center of the court. And so then the court is drawn either going up, up to the right or up to the left, depending on whether you're looking to the right or left. So imagine you're set in the sort of bleachers and you're sat looking down, and so you'd be looking to the right, but it's kind of a bit of a forced angle. So it's weird. It's almost like the court
angle, isn't it?
It is a perspective angle, but it doesn't quite work because nobody's that perspectivized. I don't know what the right word is, but it seems too much from the perspective you're at. It seems too forced. The perspective is a bit too forced. I'd have just preferred this to be flat on, I think. But it is what it is. It's slightly, it's angled, sort of isometric and going up to the right or to the left, depending on which way. As the player with the ball, so whoever's controlling it, gets close to the center line, the screen scrolls just ever so slightly before flicking to the opposite view, which is kind of it's weird. So you think it's going to scroll, but then it just flicks, and then you move in. If I was going from bottom right, you're going suddenly up to the top right, so it's a different way. It's an odd choice. I found it slightly disorienting. I didn't quite like it. You can't really see where your players are in front of you because you're not central to the screen when you get into the edge. Do you know what I mean? I don't know if I just didn't feel like I had a full sort of view of the court all the time, and I didn't like it very much. But maybe just me. Anyway, the controls are fairly simple for the most part. Actually, while playing, tapping the fire button passes the ball, and holding the fire button that does your shooting when you're aiming for the basket. Supposedly letting go whilst at the top of your right because you'll jump up. It's how you're supposed to score a basket. You can do all twirls and all kinds of stuff, but I did them. I don't know how I did them, but I did them. The UI at the bottom has some information regarding your team, what they're up to in its own little box. So it's basketball terminology, which I didn't fully understand. And there's a third box in the bottom right with all the info it's got the quarter you're in, so quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, the time left in it, the time left before there's a turnover, because I think in basketball you only get 30 seconds with the ball, don't you, before it swaps to the other side. I think that's actually how it works in basketball. So you've got 30 seconds and so to run up the other end and score, and if you don't, it turns over the other side, get control of the ball. I think that's actually how basketball works. I seem to remember it, but
maybe.
I could be wrong. I could be right. I don't know. But there's another countdown going down. I think that's what it is. And yeah, and then you got the score as well. So, the score's in there as well. I thought the visuals were pretty good in this for the players. They're pretty well animated figures running about, and it all moves at a good speed too. You can have all 6 sort of players on screen at once, and they move around quite quickly. There's no slowdown. I didn't really see any glitching or anything. So it's all quite good. The controls I thought were fairly snappy. They responded quickly when I was pressing the fire button, passing all right. So, and despite the weird flick screen, the game's okay to play. Once you get kind of used to that weirdness. The only problem is the computer's infallible and will quite often just steal the ball and go and score without fail, just every time. I just found they were just perfect. I was never sure how I was supposed to steal the ball off them. They did it routinely to me. They just ran up to me and took the ball off me. Because if you press the fire button, it swaps the player you control. So I was jabbing away at the fire button and that just was changing control rather than trying to steal it, which I thought would have been the more optional way. I don't know. So it felt a bit confusing in that one. I didn't really feel like didn't really know what to do, and I read the instructions and I couldn't find anything in the instructions that said this is how you steal the ball back, but they were doing it routinely to me, so it was a bit annoying. There are fouls and violations, but I never saw them, so I don't know what you're supposed to do with that. There's no free throws. It says there's something in the instructions about that, and there's also a way to switch the plays that never seemed to work for me. It said stand still near the center line and then hold the fire button, and you'll go into a thing to select the plays. And whenever I tried that, they just stole the ball off me, went and scored. So
not optimum.
No, I was like, oh, that doesn't work. The background graphics crowd, it's expressionistic, I think is the word I'd use.
Yeah.
It's a weird mix of red and blue marks, isn't it, against a black background. Like an expressionist painting. It's like someone called in an expressionist painter and said, can you do as a background? He said, I've done you a background. There are your crowd. Ah.
They all speak like that as well.
They all do, all in my experience. The sound is pretty perfunctory. There's a weird beat at the beginning. It sounds like just the drum beat from Another One Bites the Dust by Queen. And there's a bouncing ball and static like roars of the crowd when you score and that sort of thing. There's nothing particularly great. It's just noise. There's not a lot else to say about this one. It feels like a decent basketball game, I guess, but I just wanted it to scroll instead of flicking the screen as in international basketball, which I think I preferred. I didn't mind it. I reckon in 2 players you get some good enjoyment from this if you're both into basketball, but I'm not sure there's much in this for the single player because there's no leagues or tournaments on offer. It's just a single game of basketball. It feels very much like Accolade's other sports games in that regard. Hardball, 4th and inches, where it's just 2 teams play. There you go. But they felt a bit more in those, and they felt a bit more accessible and a bit more to them. I don't know. I just think it just wants to present. It just wants to present with a good simulacrum of the game itself, and that's it. I think that's all it wants to do. It's just, here's a game of basketball, play it. There's some different players and some plays you can do and stuff like that, but we're not going to go too deep into it. I guess in that respect it works, but I think without the sort of extra trappings and the sort of things to sort of really draw you back, you'd really need to like basketball to get much out of this one. I think it's one for the basketball aficionados and maybe a bit of fun in two-player, but I think you'd soon tire of it because it just feels a bit, I don't know, it's okay, but I'm not a basketball fan, so it is what it is. I think I preferred international basketball, all told. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about Accolade sports games, these most recent ones. I don't know if they're just kind of getting a bit, they're removing some of the fun out of the game. But at least this time, instead of a treacle speed strategy tennis thing, you've got, we have an option heavy, but perhaps a little bit funless basketball game. Now, I don't generally like basketball, okay? I'm short and stocky, the exact opposite, in fact, of what is required for basketball. And so I've never really engaged with the sport nor found any fun with it. I can also not jump very high, and my aim with a ball at a hoop is crap. So none of those things are going to get me selected for any team anytime soon, which has never really given me an affinity with basketball.
Whereas I can jump as high as a traffic light, so
exactly. So it's maybe more your thing than mine, and for that reason, I've never really got into the game. Obviously, it's just I'm bounced and literally humorous, ironic way bouncing off it. But there is at this game at its heart a very clever thing. The graphics are good, I thought. Reasonably isometric angle, I think, view of the court. Weird. Players that move around pretty quickly, quite good animation, all said and done. There's also a lot of options and playbooks and stuff. I don't know what any of that means, but if you bought into this and bought this game, you probably do.
Yeah, exactly.
And I imagine all of those things are pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I found they all got in the way for me of the game, but I think that's because I wanted to just get into the game and get on with it. And this isn't that kind of game. Although a fast break is a particular type of basketball play, isn't it? Where they just rush to try and get straight to the score as quickly as possible. But and so I wanted to rush and get into the game, but this isn't that kind of setup. So that's on me. That's not on the game. That's just on me. I know that's my expectations of this being different to what it actually is going to present you with. So that's not on the game. I found that the graphics all work really well. There's a game of basketball to be played in here, isn't there? In whatever version it's playing. I didn't want to do that strategy stuff. I just wanted to play a bit of, basketball, but that's just me. What there is here for a fan of the game, I imagine is really good. There's a lot of little nuances and things to go at. Might be a bit text heavy, maybe a bit visually complex in places, but at the end of the day, there's a little fast moving, nice little basketball game to be had. I think 68%, probably a little bit harsh. Maybe they're scoring it because it's a bit fans only. I don't know. But, and is it as good as other basketball games around at the time? Well, it's equal. It's as good as some of the others. Maybe not as intense, maybe, but it's okay. But I think it's perhaps, I don't know, maybe there's just the playoff that they've tried doesn't quite work for those people that aren't into their basketball. If you just want to go and have a game of basketball for fun, I don't know if this is the right game for that. But it all looks the part, and it's another good, decent Accolade release. It's just a bit funless, I think. It's a habit they've got into. The tennis game was a bit funless. This one's a bit funless. So other than that, it's all right.
It's all right. Yeah, it's not terrible. There we go. That's Fast Break. It's okay. Let's move along. We've still got one more game left to round out January, so let's get along to that. And Graham, it's time for us to enter the Caveman Ugh-Lympics.
That's it, yes, the Caveman Ugh-Lympics. $9.95, 80% this, published from Electronic Arts. Dynamics are behind it as well. Design is Greg Johnson, producer Don Traeger, coded by Richard Real Jr., Darek Lukasuk, and John Loop, who's responsible in code terms for California Games and Summer Games 1 and 2. Interesting pedigree, that. Graphics, Brian Mann, Darek Lakuzuk and Greg Johnson, and the musicians are here, Alan McKean and Bryce Morcello. Another good name. So a new multi-themed, multi-event game. Okay, these have always worked out really well, haven't they, on the Commodore 64? He said. This one does have some interesting things to note, and I think the presence of John California Games Loop on code has lent this some epicness or epicsness.
Yeah.
And maybe. And the humour, well, I think it might have appeal here. It's less inspired by the glam metal of that silly other game that we played, the Blood and Guts. And it is more about a band of cave people, cave folk, troglodytes. So more about the old cavemen type idea. What do we call them nowadays? I don't know. Cavemen. It all seems a bit, in these times, maybe we avoid that. I don't know. So, I'll go sort of through my sort of impressions of the game as well as, and I'll sort of tackle this in a slightly different way that we normally do. But because it's not like there's a story to follow of this or anything like that. So it's not like a game where, it's in a multi-event game where, the idea is you participate. It's a Summer Games parody or a games parody.
Very much so, yeah.
And so, it does all of those things. And I'll sort of go through the process of that. But my initial impression straight off the bat was that the art style here is very good. And I quite liked the humor. It's all tongue-in-cheek, taking fun swipes at summer games and all the epic stylings. That sort of little opening title bit, for example, where the logo comes down and, it's got the famous duh, 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 and the guy runs on and then the sign drops down and all that sort of stuff. It's got a nice tongue-in-cheekness about it. And then I think sometimes the audio is perhaps gets a little bit disjointed and jolty at certain times. But other than those things, that particular sequence is quite good and it sets the tone for the graphics. This is obviously a multiplayer or single player type game. But you get to choose from such game character luminaries as Vincent, Kronk, Crudler, Glunk, Thag, and Ukar.
Yep.
Though you can practice and participate in any and all of the events, all but Vincent, who has no extra skills, and Gronk, who is good at everything, have particular events they are better at. Though in actuality, that's quite a nice way of adding some balance or levels of difficulty to things. Mm-hmm. The events then, we've got Mate Toss, Clubbing, Dino Vault, Dinosaur Race, Fire Making, and Sabertooth Tiger Race. They're all pretty interesting sounding. Oh, very good. Mm-hmm. And so the sort of setting for this, it says in the blurb, before corporate sponsors and fashion gear, there were cavemen. Competition was ugly. Athletes won by bashing the other guy first. Pick your favorite Ugh-Lympian, club your way through 6 prehistorical events. I like the way they did that. Beat your friends to the caves of fame. The greatest Neanderthal athletes of all time share their secrets. And then you've got the various different elements of the game type. So in the Mate Toss, you've got to swing your partner around in circles, and I'll sort of discuss the events as we go through them and do things like that. So the game starts officially with the opening ceremony. So you go through the options, and the game starts with the opening ceremony a la Summer Games, and then obviously the caveman style items drop in, and it sets the tone. So grunting, club wielding, cartoon style Neanderthals in the classic Captain Caveman inspired tradition. So that's kind of what they look like here, that kind of look. Then everything sort of appears on, and everything is themed in this game like this, and that's one of the things I really like about it. So then on a rock slate, you get to choose things like the number of players. It's sort of written on, carved into a rock slate, which I quite like. I do like that kind of the attention to detail. And then you get a really funny cartoon display, and I think the graphics on that screen particularly are really, really good. Really cartoon looking, really funny when you can choose the characters, and they're really funny looking. And I thought that was really cool. Really good profile screen again in that theme, and ties into the thing. Everything about this game shouts Caveman Ugh-Lympics. It's all very tonally correct in that sense. So it sticks to its guns. And you can choose the full Ugh-Lympics, you can practice events, you can restart the selection, or you can check out the Caves of Fame. And then once you start the sort of full Ugh-Lympics, you get the official game opening sequence, which did make me laugh, actually, where the caveman sort of runs on, sort of humps and sort of runs really badly on. And it made me laugh loads because the cavemen in it are quite big in comparison to the other characters you've used to seeing. And when he runs on, the flame goes out, and then he just smashes the Olympic flame thing. Just stuff like that. It's just it's all in keeping with it. It's quite funny. And then, of course, after that, once that's played out, well, assuming that you've chosen however many players you want to play it, and assuming that you've got your joystick armed and ready, you can begin to go through the events, and you'll play through them turn by turn, one at a time, taking your turns to go through them. The first one you'll encounter, or the way I went through them, I got Mate Toss, which is where it's a bit, I imagine this is a bit like a hammer throw in the hammer throw tradition, except this time you've got your partner, and you grab her by the the ankles and then spin around and let her go throw through the air to try and get distance. Interestingly,
if you play Crudelli, you throw a man. You throw the blank.
Yeah, I was going to say because if you read I won't go into reading because there's loads of caveman inspired blurb. Even the credits in the actual instructions for this are written in caveman language.
Yeah.
I'll talk about that in a while. But yeah, you can choose different characters, and so you throw in a different. There is balance there, and the graphics at this point, background graphics look really good. Sprites are quite big and bold. It sets the tone for pretty much the whole game. Actually, the things move around pretty well, and it's quite funny to do that. And it's it is funny. After that, a dino race where you hop on the back of a dinosaur and peg it left to right, jumping over rocks as they appear. The screen split horizontally in that classic way that these kind of games, these kind of races are. And I thought, again, nice graphics. And the control about these is they kind of kept the controls to the way you control them in the Summer Games. So gone are the Games Summer Edition crazy controls.
Yeah.
Up, down, left, right, turn around, go wink 3 times, clap your hands together and then sort of say hello to a passing elk. That kind of level of control. No, it's just mainly waggling, going around in circles with the stick, fire button, combinations of those things. Mm-hmm. So again, so when you're racing on the back of the dino race, in the Mate Toss, you've got to spin it round and then press the fire button at the right time. Similar to the way that the traditional events work and has that accessibility factor to them because of that. After the dino race is the fire making, which made me laugh for ages playing that. You've got a cave in the background, which is where I realised 2 large graphic characters, and you've got to waggle your button and press your button to sort of rub the sticks together to try and make fire. But at the same time, you can also smack your opponent across the head. Yeah. You have to blow on the fire to try and get the tinder to sort of ignite. It's genuinely quite a funny level, that.
I couldn't do it.
No, it's rock hard. Don't get me wrong. And like I say, some of these are quite difficult to even get to through or anything, but it did make me laugh. And again, unusually, because we've had games that have tried to be funny and they aren't. This one actually does have real chuckle moments. And the clubbing made me laugh loads. The event clubbing. It's just because it's split into 2 parts. The first phase, you have to try and frighten your opponent to get the first crack by. You just have to move the joystick around in random directions to do some kind of erratic war dance.
Yeah.
And then because he does that, then you get the drop on your opponent, and then you get to club them over the head.
Yeah.
The second phase, in the clubbing phase, the graphics on the cliff top and the way it's done and the big sprites, it's funny. It's a funny thing to play. And I was playing this single player, so it's a bit unforgiving as well. But 2-player or multiplayer, this would be hilarious to play with a good set of mates. You'd have a right laugh with that. The saber-tooth tiger race is actually quite clever because you're basically running away from a saber-tooth tiger. So it's split again horizontally, and both the runners are at the top and the saber-tooth is at the bottom, and you're pegging it. But if you start to fall behind, you start to appear in the saber-tooth's screen at the bottom, or so it's quite clever the way it works. That you got to basically run away, and there's obviously it's a bit. Imagine a moon. What's it called? You're running along and you got to jump over obstacles.
It's hurdles. It's like a hurdle.
Hurdles. Yeah. So I'm trying to think. It is hurdles, and if you hit them, obviously slow down, and then you're going to get eaten by the saber-tooth tiger.
Yeah.
Which is quite funny when it gets hold of you as well. And then by far my favourite event out of all of them was the Dino Vault, because I thought it was hilarious. So you've essentially got to run from left to right and attempt to jump over a dinosaur.
Yeah, it's pole
using
vault,
like a pole vault. Yeah, it's pole vault, but it's really good animation on this. It's the best animation in all of them. It's the best looking of all the levels, I think, as well, in terms of it's a smaller sprite, but it's really well animated. The really funny waggle to the end of the stick when you run with it, which made me laugh loads. And then when you try and jump, several different things can happen. It can go wrong, and you can just ping backwards, which I did loads, which made me laugh for ages. Or you can try and jump over and you'll get eaten by the dinosaur, or I just did one where he just fell straight down the crevice in the middle. The sound effects are really funny on that as well. Or he grabbed hold of me at one point, he shook me about in his mouth, and then I slipped out my caveman uniform, just flew off naked into the distance. It's genuinely a funny level, that is. And it's quite a lot of fun to do. And again, none of these controls for these things are hard to figure out. They're basically waggle. I mean, most of them are waggle left and right, or paste waggle, or fire button, or variations. There's nothing over complex at all. And that works massively to its benefit. And after that, once you've gone through that, assuming that you've got winners and losers, they all stand on the rocks. Again, it's a scene that made me laugh, where you've got the cavemen who win, stood on the rocks, getting their, rewards, the ceremony. It's quite funny. And the game plays out. That's the game in a nutshell. That's how it plays out. It's a multi-event game in the caveman theme, and you play through those events and you can practice or you can play them. And they are fun events. They're not serious at all. But the implementation is actually very nice and slick and easy to do and easy to play, and you can just get out of a laugh with them. There's no seriousness. There's not. I don't know what it was about. I think there was just lots of head injury in some of the others, whereas this one there isn't any of that. It's just funny. So the characters and the graphics in the game, I thought, were all actually pretty good. I mean, you can't fault them. The graphics are what they are, but the characterization and the cartooniness of them does really work for this. And I think they sort of get away with it. And it's not amazing. And there is, some of the animation is a little bit stilted maybe, but where it works, it works. But what it is consistent with all the characters and the approach and the animation style. So it doesn't change from event to event. It does get slightly better with the Dino Vault, but the main look and feel and everything around it all looks the part and plays in the kind of context. Some of the items like a mate toss and some of the others, and some of the events are a little bit harder than the others, but that's just the nature of these kind of games, I guess. But in thinking about how much Commodore Brown there is in that game, it's actually not, because there's a lot, it's not actually that bad.
It's not really.
The game is like large, bold. I think it plays out pretty well. All of these, with all of these kind of things, does the humor outstay its welcome? I don't know. I don't think it did. I don't think it's a game you could play loads and loads and loads and just side split at. But it does have enough funny bones and funny little elements in it to just, you'd go at it and you'd probably find, a few things funny about it. And with everything keeping in the main theme, everything, the way it's written, the words on the screen, the way that they everything's ugh this and ugh that, and the descriptions of the characters are genuinely funny. I thought there's the game in here, a really good game. I'd never played it before, so I thought it was really good. The sounds are good in it as well. Nothing mind-blowing necessarily, but where they need to be, they're good, and the loading times from the disc I thought were pretty accessible. I'm on an emulator, I can't speak for what it was like in reality. But there's a lot of things to like here. I think key to this is the sense of style and thematic consistency that keeps you in the game space. And enough events of enough daftness and enough easiness that it just pulls off what I didn't think was actually going to be possible. A fun multi-event game based on something else other than, Olympics, and a caveman version. I think it would stand up to some repeated plays, but maybe not crammed in a big space. With a few mates, though, I think you'd have a really good laugh with this. And in a space of lots of, silly thematic multi-event games, I think this is probably the best one that I've played in terms of, not saying it's the best multi-event game, but it's the best themed multi-event game I think we've played. It's certainly one I've played. Because I thought the cartoons and the style and the ambience were really good. And just touch back on that to sort of go back onto that. If you go on to look at all of the blurb and the instructions, of which there's a great deal. There's actually an entire newsletter that comes with the volume 1 issue 1 of the Ugh-Examiner. Comes with this. And there's a whole series of articles, news articles, and funny items about all the cave people and all the various things in there. And it's really funny. And then right down to the end credits, it says at the bottom of this, in the obituaries, you've got Blurg, Donk, Gunk, Feck, Bunk, and 1,400 others died last Wednesday in the approaching Ice Age due to a lack of language. Family members had little to say. Blog, the oldest known caveman, died yesterday, the incredible age of 38. In an interview just before his death, when asked how he managed to live so long, Blog replied, "Not die." And then the only final thing I'll say is that there's a little blurb about Electronic Arts where it says, "One day Gerg think, do caveman game funny. Gerg lumber over to Ugtronic Arts to tell Don, Don scream." And there's a little story there, but it reminded me of when we were talking about Gary lose brain. It just reminded me of Gary Lineker's little story, and it made me laugh because it's written in that kind of style. I thought this was pretty good, and I quite enjoyed it, and I thought it was a bit of light relief and quite funny. What did you think?
Yeah, I quite enjoyed this. It's that intro made me laugh because it's like it's a bit of two fingers up to epics. I thought it's just quite funny. Yeah. It's like I think it's interesting. I mean, what's his face name? John Leup. He went to, I know you mentioned California Games. I don't know if you mentioned it. He was also Summer Games and Summer Games 2. And I think
I said he was Summer Games 1 and 2, yeah.
That is where this draws its inspiration from, those two games. And I think you can, whether that's him, whether that's the whole team, have looked back and gone, we're going to make this funny, but we're going to look at what made those two games. And in my opinion, Summer Games 2 is still the pinnacle. We're going to look at what made those good, and we're going to try and aim for that. And as you rightly said, where so many other ones like Game Summer Edition, Winter Edition, they've lost their way in this plethora of nightmare things and the stupid multi stuff we've seen, like alternative world games and wall jumping or whatever that stupid thing was, or blood and guts, and these have just gone. Well, it's in the controls. It's not about and it's about having a bit of fun and thematic consistency, and I think they've done that pretty well.
Yeah,
you're right. I think some of the presentation, it lacks the smoothness of the Epic's greats, but I think in the way that, because I think I imagine that the sprites are quite a bit more detailed in this because there's a lot of cartoon sort of style animation to them, and I think what they've done is pretty well. I thought the what's it called, the where you're riding the dinosaur, that screen looked great. I mean, it's really colourful. It looks really smooth. It scrolls smoothly. The animation of the dinosaur is really good. It's like Rim Runner, but two of them. And I thought it looked really cool. But again, the background on the cave, the fire making. Yeah. And I like the idea of these stupid events, fire making. Yeah. They kind of work. Although I think my favourite was the saber run.
That was funny.
Because you just legged it away, and that was one I could do quite well as well, so it was all right. Yeah, I thought this was pretty good. Some of the controls are chugged a bit, I don't know, maybe in amongst the times. And yeah, the dino jump one, I never managed to get anywhere. I clear it.
No, I'm not sure you meant to.
I don't know if you can or not. I think one, I went, like you, I went flying backwards, then I just went nowhere, and then I went into the crevasse.
Yeah, made me laugh loads.
I was like, okay. But I like the way you pick the height where the dinosaur's neck getting stretched upwards. There's some good humour in this and some nice thematics, and I think the way they've kept to the whole thing works quite well. And the graphics are, the background graphics and stuff. There's some really nice stuff in this, and it's good. And as you rightly say, I think I think if we'd have played this at the time, I think we'd have had a good laugh because I think there's a good multiplayer game. A few of you sat around. Just the clubbing one would have been. I think would have been stupidly. Would have found that hilarious.
Yeah,
then
it was funny. That. Dancing, the sort of war thing you have to do made me laugh loads. It's really
just
funny.
Like, what is going on here? But I liked it. I thought it was good. 80%, maybe a bit too harsh. I think maybe close to a sizzler, really, perhaps. I think there's enough here. 6 events.
Yeah.
I think what they gave. I think it's better than that Summer Olympiad.
Yes, I would agree.
And that got close to a sizzler. I think it's better than that. But yeah, quite like this. Nice one to end on. Good stuff. There you go. Who knew we were going to like some kind of weird alternative games thing? No, I think. I think this week's been better than last week.
Yes, I think that's goes without saying. There's been at least the trajectory of things has been better overall.
Yeah, I think mostly as well. Apart from Roy the Rovers, everything's been. I mean, even Game Over 2 was averagely okay.
Yeah.
It was averagely okay. I think it wasn't terrible, but it was just average.
It wasn't Artura.
No, exactly. There was a lot last week that was bad. Risk was pretty good for what it was. Star Trek was decent enough. Fast Break, good basketball, decent basketball. Caveman Ugh-Lympics, fun. And Pacmania, bit dull, but a good conversion of a
conversion.
Yeah, a conversion. It didn't convert me, but it was a conversion. Yeah, there we go. That's what we've looked at. So, but before we go, it's the end of the month. It's just a 2-month one. We've got some crap verts.
We do.
The first one is for a classic. This is Speedball. So everyone knows the game. Well, everyone knows Speedball 2. I think Speedball's maybe like Street Fighter to Street Fighter 2, I always think. Yeah. But this advert, what's he wearing?
Well, they've obviously watched the Bond movie, haven't they, a little bit?
Which one?
Is it Thunderball?
But I don't know.
I think maybe there's a bit of that, and there's a bit of New Barbarians in that.
He's got a colander on his head with spikes on.
He has got a spike colander on his head, yeah, and he's also wearing war underpants.
Very shiny war pants. They've been buffed.
Yes, he's got buff war pants.
I want to know who the person is who's shined them.
And I'm just going to say this, what's the point in wearing armor if you're not going to wear it on the places that matter? Like on your legs, because he's got big gaps in the armor there, especially around the knee. The knee and the leg area. Those spikes would penetrate the muscle or cause severe injury, and you'd bleed out from that badly. You're not going to do well out of that. It looks a bit grim. There's blood all over the arena as well, smeary blood as well, which is a bit that's quite dark.
Yeah, and it just doesn't look. It doesn't look like the kind of person that I thought Speedball was made up of.
No,
when I think of the in-game graphics and the sort of the portraits and stuff that was in Speedball. That's not him.
Yeah.
And not in that outfit.
No, it looks like someone that's gone in fancy dress is dressed as somebody from Speedball.
Yeah, exactly. He's made that himself, Annie, out of like egg cups and colanders and cardboard and painted it.
He's got American football shoulder pads on, but he's got them over his shoulder sort of armor, which is weird that you'd wear it that way. It's like he's got dressed wrong. I don't get it. And then also I noticed the logo as well. It doesn't shout Speedball at me. It shouts at Angular Puzzles.
Yeah. And I'm not a fan of the coming soon at the top in the sort of backward-leaning yellow.
Oh my God! They've done that's an italic in the wrong direction. That's like that's a typeface crime, right there. They've skewed it. That's not a natural italic. They've skewed a font that wasn't generally italic. Nobody should ever do that. Ever, never do that. Never kern text badly like that either. You notice that the gap between the letters and coming is different to the gap between soon. Because they've kerned it from left to right as opposed to properly kerning that text, which is to set the space between each letter evenly. Never do that, bloody amateur. Yeah,
and there's the quote at the bottom. Speedball is fast, furious, and graphically very stylish. If you're going to have that, you need a stylish advert.
Yeah, it's odd though, because the Bitmap Brothers logo is very cool, actually. I love that hand on that logo. But
the image logo, the Bitmap Brothers logo, all good. The screenshots look cool, but just him. No.
And anatomically, well, they've gone a bit wild again, haven't they? They've gone ab crazy again, and that could be just on the armor, though.
I think that's just on the armor, unless he spray painted his stomach.
Yeah, and I wonder if he's got, if that is, from the back, there's no armor on his ass cheeks.
Probably not.
No, that's a metal thong he's wearing, and that's going to hurt.
You can see his speedballs.
I mean, if he farts through the back of that, that's going to whistle like a banshee.
Yeah, not good.
It's going to sound like a kettle boiling. An old-fashioned kettle. Ugh, stinks.
Are you boiled? Pouring from down there.
Yeah, he's got pasta, hasn't he? He's got the right thing to do pasta on his head. So
yeah, it'd be very handy to do that there. Anyway, there you go. Speedball. It's not very good. Let's move on.
What the hell is that?
Well, I'll let you describe it.
Is there a way of describing that? A bulbous-headed alien creature with gnarly teeth and two female, or male to female, I guess, hands for ears.
I've got the nails painted.
Or wings. Nails painted. Are they wings? What are they?
I don't know.
What the hell is that? Fighting a robot spider egg.
And this is called No Excuses, which there aren't for this.
There aren't for that. And weirdly, that fighting egg can fire what look like bullets upwards and forwards, neither of which are the direction those weird hand creatures are coming from. No. So that egg is cracked. That's it. He's done. It's the one in the distance that's coming. That's going. They obviously use those hands to fly.
I'm guessing they're flappy hands.
Flappy. What kind of evolutionary step created that? A creature with no body and hands and hand wings.
How does it
It's got
feed
hand
itself?
wings.
Yeah, does those hands reach round into its mouth?
They maybe just reach, I think. I don't know. It's a miserable existence, isn't it? Because they're going to land on their chins no matter what they do.
Yeah. It's not good, is it?
No, have you seen the actual in-game ones?
Yes, I have. I've seen them, all right.
Oh, my Lord. So this is from Arcana. My gosh, this is power play, people.
Yeah.
No
excuses from Arcana. Superbly addictive gameplay. It looks like some isometric nonsense in the other.
You need fast reactions, lateral thinking, and weird head gloves.
Above all, a cool head with hands on the side instead of ears.
That logo's so bad in it, that No Excuses. What is it with drawing logos and just extending the parts with a ruler? Don't make an E look like that.
Or jagged off the N.
Oh, look at it. And no. And then again, look, you see, no, look, I'm just being picky, I know, but look, you've got excuses there. And why is the gap between the last E and the S bigger than all the other letters? Don't do that. Don't do it.
There's no excuse.
Just check your spacing, please. And please, if you're going to create creatures for a game, never make what can we even call them?
I don't know. Handheads.
Handheads. I mean, no, absolutely not. No, there's no
fist noggins,
and yet the hands are surprisingly well drawn compared to the rest.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big ridged forehead and stuff, but they are well drawn. But they're very. Who paints the nails?
There's obviously nail bars. I imagine on a planet where you've got all you are is a hand, two hands, and a head. I imagine nail bars are probably like the one business that do well.
Probably
that and dentists.
Yeah.
Can you imagine eating dinner at these people? Because if they're sat on a table eating and they've put food in their mouth, when they chew, their heads are going to flop up and down.
It's not good, is it?
No, it's rubbish. And that spider egg's got its legs in the wrong place. So the legs don't make sense. Has it got two legs? So it's a bipedal egg. That should be a tripod egg. A treg. That's a beg. That's not going to walk around. It's going to roll over.
It is. It's a weeble. It's a weeble waiting to happen.
It's stupid. And it's got a ladder up the back. Why? Who's in it? Who climbs in that? What is it about? Why has it got numbers painted on it? Why is that number 7?
Don't know.
I don't want to know. It's firing ping pong balls. Exploding ping pong balls. Everything about that game's wrong.
There you go. There's no excuse for no excuses.
No excuse for that. That's the stupidest character in an image I've seen in a long time, that.
That is a good one. And finally, move on to our last one. And if you're talking about anatomically delirious, what has happened to that man's back?
Do you know what? I take it back. All right. Second stupidest thing I've seen in a while. Goodness me. What? Why?
This is Times of Law for those who don't know.
And they've over-muscularized him to the point where he's
he just looks like a piece of rubber. He just
they didn't know when to stop. They just carried on drawing muscles.
And the way he's bent, what's going on with his knee? His right knee.
Well, look, what do you mean? What's going on with it? There's some kind of muscular atrophy going on, and it's all over the place. It's no wonder his body's. Look, he's got a really saggy ass as well.
I know, and I also think that the thing that he's attacking, that sort of hairy beast thing that he's attacking, is actually backing away in horror at his anatomy.
Well, he would. I mean, firstly, you know what? He's clearly got his pants aren't covering his ass cracks. That means he's probably flapping at the front. He's got back muscle, but no front muscle, and he's wielding his axe really weirdly, to the point when something bad is going to happen.
He's got to chop his own head
off. The giant monkey creature cave thing's got no schlong, so it's all unpleasant, isn't it? It really. What's this? Times of Law. There's a really bad castle drawing in the background. It's just like on a field of what looks like honeycomb. Like crunchy bars.
It's fantasy, yeah. Just have a guy attacking a monster sort of thing with a castle in the background and some mountains. Okay, I can do that.
Because they're such right, what shall I put in the foreground? I'll tell you what, just draw a load of broken crunchy bars, some mushy peas behind that, and stick the castle on top of the mushy peas.
Absolutely.
Okay, you asked for it. And then what about the logo? Just make that blend in with everything so you can't really read it. Okay,
you can't read it, yeah. Use the same colour.
Use the same colour as the crunchy bars. All right, okay. What should the castle look like? I don't know. Just castle shape. What are you on about? Look, people aren't going to be worried about that. They're going to be looking at the muscular barbarian who's clearly having trouble holding his axe.
And his muscles together.
It looks like he's prolapsing.
From everywhere.
And he's got war socks on. And I admire that dexterity of any sock wearer. You know, he's not got boots; he's got war socks, and I'm going with that.
He looks like those. His footwear are made from the skin of that monster.
It does.
They look very similar.
It does actually, and also because it looks like he stole his socks. That's why he's angry.
Yeah, because you're my socks back. Oh my God, what's up with your body? It's all wrong.
You notice that the club that the monster's wielding he's obviously filed it to too thin an end. That's just going to snap. He's going to be like, oh, damn it.
Yeah. It's like a toothpick.
It's a toothpick. What's he doing with it? It's like a tuning fork. He's holding it to his shoulder going, no. Yeah, rubbish. Utterly. What on earth? And I'm not going to I can't read the blurb. Acclaimed British designer Chris Roberts.
I mean, Chris Roberts he's an acclaimed. He worked for on a lot of stuff. I think he worked for on things like Fallout New Vegas. I think he's worked at Origin.
Okay, well, maybe this is his first foray into it. And the game art looks a little bit different to thankfully, the advert art. So goodness me, but the anatomy's gone badly wrong on him.
And then some.
We had any of these crap verts this bad for quite a while. God.
No. Yeah. Chris Roberts, Shadowrun, Brute Force, Wing Commander. Oh, he's Wing Commander. It's Chris Roberts. It's that Chris Roberts. It's the guy isn't he Star Citizen?
Is it Star Citizen guy, is it? Wow. Okay.
Is he Chris Roberts, Wing Commander? He founded a studio, Club Cloud Imperium Games.
Hopefully they're hiring better artists now.
Well, he's the person that's, Star Citizen is just this, well, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, big old thing. Yes, it's not a great image that. It doesn't shout Times of Law. It just shouts, man can't hold axe and monkey wants his socks back. That probably wasn't what they were going for, but that's what we read from it.
In Times of Law, when men stole monkeys' socks and their anatomy just exploded in all directions.
And fought for supremacy on the green pea fields and crunchy bar landscapes. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Not
there
good.
you go. That's good. That's a nice way to open the year with 3 good crap verts.
It is. We always like that.
Yeah. I don't know what. I keep looking at those hand heads, fist noggins. I don't know what to call them.
We need a name for them. We have to think about that. Because that's also the ears, technically, as well, isn't it? So,
yeah. I mean, literally, because they've got no eyes. So, maybe they put their hands over. Maybe they see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil things.
They eat no evil. Yeah, as soon as they land, they're like, the chin's it in it. It's just all wrong.
It's all very wrong. Oh, there you go. Some good crap verts to end January off with. Let's have a look at the chart. The first chart of the new year. This is from Commodore user. In at number 10 is Armalite.
Makes sense.
Down to number 9 is Pro Ski Simulator.
That doesn't.
No. A re-entry at number 8 is Commando.
Back again.
Oh, yeah. Down to number 7 from 3 is Joe Blade 2.
Goodness me.
Oh, jump and kick boy. New entry at number 6 is Emily Hughes' International Soccer.
Okay.
Staying at number 5 is Bombjack. Up to number 4 is International Rugby Simulator.
Not come across that one yet.
Not yet, we haven't. Down from number 1 to number 3 is Last Ninja 2. And then new entries. At number 2, we have Operation Wolf.
Okay.
And unfortunately, at number 1 is Double Dragon.
Oh my lord.
which I understand is not very good. I don't think I ever played the C64 version, but I've heard it's not great.
Yes, we will.
At number 11, we've got End Zone. Re-entry at number 12 with Football of the Year. New entry at 13, Micropro Soccer.
Oh, finally.
Finally, that comes in a month or two. New entry at 14 is Ace 2. Down to number 15, Football Manager 2. New entry at 16 is Tato. Oh, Tato's coming up to
Potato.
1. Up to number 17 is School Days. Down to number 13 is Barbarian 2. New entries at 19 and 20 with Afterburner and Biggles.
Okay.
Biggles, that's weird, isn't it? Must be a budget re-entry or something.
Budget re-entry, yeah.
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, that's it. What we got looking up next week. I'll try and work out which of these are Amiga and which are not. Well, the ones we've got Amiga next to it. We've got Ace 2.
Okay.
Blip Video Classics.
God knows what that is.
God knows what that is. Double Dragon.
Okay.
Eagle's Nest we've already looked at. Espionage.
Okay.
Exploding Fist Plus.
Interesting.
Gaplus.
Okay. Shooter, is that?
I don't know. Growing Pains we've already looked at. Guerrilla War. Hellfire Attack.
Okay.
Ingrid's Back.
Okay.
I don't know if she went anywhere.
I didn't.
Oh. International Rugby Simulator.
Okay.
Jet Set Willy Nightmare we've looked at. Live and Let Die.
Okay. Interesting.
Mad Flunky we've looked at. Micropro Soccer.
Wow, excellent.
Neuromancer.
Okay.
I don't know what I'll be like. Ocean Conqueror. Rackham.
Okay.
Rambo 3.
Oh, Lord.
Return of the Jedi.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Thunderblade.
Okay.
We'll be looking at that Times of Law and seeing exactly what's going on there. And Total Eclipse.
Okay.
That's more slow-moving drillimation, isn't it?
It is. Driller action, yeah. Good sound.
So that's it. That's what we have coming up for February's episode. That's it. January's done. We are moving apace into 1989. How are you feeling so far about how things have gone?
Well, it's a shaky start, but there's been a few highlights this episode. So maybe that's the tone it'll take them. Maybe they'll get less and less, but some of the games will come out will be better and better. I can only hope.
Yeah. Just to say as well, going forward, having planned all the things out, apart from I think it's March and April. I think March is a 4-episode, or April's a 3. I think pretty much every month is a 2-parter. The number of games drops quite considerably this year, but so just March I think is a big one, and April I think is 3. It might be February. I can't remember which. But yeah, so expect 2 weeks. It is what it is, like you said. Maybe less is more. Less is more.
That's the plan.
We can but hope. I think that's it. Anything else you want to add? Nothing else?
No. I think that's January started things off. Let's see where we go, and maybe there'll be more crap verts like those.
We can but hope. So that's it. As ever, I have been Adrian Mills.
And I have been Graham Radding.
And we have been stealing the socks of monkey monsters on a field of crunchies. And we will see you again next week. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Zapped to the Past podcast. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the world of Commodore 64 games, as well as the music, films and TV from around the 1980s, driven, of course, by the issue of Zap 64 magazine published at that time. We will return with a whole new batch of games and stuff to talk about next week. Until then, if you want to listen to or download previous episodes of Zapped to the Past, and why wouldn't you, they can all be found on our website at zappedtothepast.com, as well as being available on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Deezer, Audible, Player FM, and, well, pretty much anywhere where we can upload them. By the way, we do always love to hear from our amazing listeners, so if you'd like to contact us about anything in the podcast or beyond, you can do so by emailing us at zappedtothepast@gmail.com. We're also active on Twitter under @ZapTother, as well as Facebook, Instagram, and most social media platforms. Just search for Zapped to the Past and you'll find us. Oh, and if you like the podcast and what we're doing, please do like, share, review, rate us. It really helps. Something, apparently. The Zapped to the Past podcast is written and produced by Adrian Mills and Graham Raddings, and recorded at Flaky Bits 2.0 Studio. All opinions expressed are those of the writers, and while we indeed love Zap 64 magazine, the Zapped to the Past podcast is not affiliated with it in any way. Stay safe, see you next time, and remember, we play these games so you don't have to.